I'd like to call the meeting to order at 6:05.
Okay. Do you want to do a roll call?
Commissioner Northcross?
Present.
Commissioner Sinclair?
Here.
Present.
Commissioner Shepard?
Present.
Commissioner McGinnis?
Present.
We have a quorum.
We've had our chair, Parlov, our commissioner Henley, and our commissioner Duvall just regretfully have said that they wouldn't be able to attend tonight. So we do not have a chair or vice chair. As part of due process and procedure, we do need a motion to represent a chair just for tonight, and then so we'll motion second, and then whoever's voted in will be the temporary chair for this evening. You can nominate yourself if you would like.
I make a motion to nominate Tim Shepard to be chair tonight.
Is that because I pointed at you? I'll second that. I'm not a procedure guy, but I'll take it, I guess. You want a roll call?
Yeah, or
All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion passes.
You can coach me because I don't know the process.
all right.
Do we need a motion for vice chair?
No, we do not.
If I'm the chair, this is going to be a really quick meeting.
Do you want to move down one then?
Sure.
All right. And then Sue, do you have the time buzzer then?
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay.
All right, what do you want me to do? What are we doing?
All right, next up is number 3, official communications. I would like to let the audience know and the public know that there was a public notice sent out for 11 Mohawk for a rezoning. It was unfortunately not properly noticed, and so it will be coming back to this planning commission at the April 2nd meeting. It will not, it's not on the agenda tonight. We have republished the agenda over 48 hours ago, and we apologize for anyone that's made the effort to come tonight. So,
Mark, that still means that people that are here to speak about 11 Mohawk can speak about 11 Mohawk at public comment.
Public comments?
at public comment, correct. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, are we on to number 4?
Yep.
Approval of minutes? Is that what we're doing from last month?
Agenda.
Approval
I
of
move
the
to
agenda.
approve the agenda as prepared.
Thank you, Mike.
Support.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right, now approval of the minutes from February 5th. Any additions or questions, Michael?
None presently, thank you.
I have none.
I have one. I would like it noted under 46 West Huron that my commissioner, myself, Sinclair, was looking to see an R3 zoning at that site. Thank you.
Is there, so under 461, is there a certain page that you're referencing you'd like to see that? Or a certain location in the minutes?
At the end is fine, and I'll add at the end some additional comments. Just, I'll leave that till the end.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, should we jump right to 7? We have no special.
Did a motion?
I move to approve the minutes with the noted changes.
Support.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion passes.
All right. Public hearing?
Yep. So I have a brief presentation on this. This is a zoning text amendment for Planning Commission tonight. So this is a citywide ordinance. It is city initiated, and it is regulations for a plan unit residential development within the city zoning code. This is the process. Tonight is the public hearing on March 5th. This will go for 2 readings at City Council from here. So what is a plan unit residential development? Most cities, including Pontiac, provide a zoning tool called a plan unit residential development. It is an optional process, but allows some flexibility from the zoning code and established design guidelines and internal layout regulations with an approved plan unit residential development, or what's known in many communities as a plan unit development. The process to establish a PURD is similar to a rezoning with a public hearing and planning commission, the decision by city council, and a development agreement approved by city council as well. While this provides flexibility to things like setbacks, lot widths, and design, the process is more involved than a site plan, which only needs planning commission approval. So let me just describe this. If you're wanting to build a single-family residential development, you're going to have to follow our current guidelines, and it may require 60-foot lot widths and certain lot sizes to be able to develop that property. However, if you have enough land that meets our current ordinance, you can go through a plan unit residential development process, and that is, as I'm in that second paragraph, and it sets some of those regulations, for from the ordinance. Now, some of the internal, or the external, the periphery of the development, that still is required out of the zoning code, but many of the other things can be, if approved, can be really established for that planned development. And so it's a really crucial process here. But we don't have any PURDs in the city. We've had this in the ordinance for a long period of time, and one of the reasons staff found is it requires a minimum of 25 acres and land that is not previously subdivided. Those two regulations are typical for PUDs or PURDs in unbuilt communities with plenty of land, but it is unrealistic in Pontiac that where we are built out mostly and where most of the land is subdivided, and it's hard to get 25 acres. So as a matter of context, I'm providing 4 slides. These are not proposed to be redeveloped. These are not proposed to be part of a PURD. I just wanted to give examples if someone wanted to go forward. So this is on the east side, and I apologize, I can't see the I know the street name, and I'm forgetting it right now. But this is east of MLK and north of Michigan Avenue, and it's one of the streets up there. What you see in the center right here, there is just over, I think the battery's dead on this. There's just over an acre, it's almost 2 acres of undeveloped land on this street here that, while you could fit under the current regulations, someone could apply for a planned unit residential development. And it really could have a unified look to it, especially if it's being built by the same developer and having some architectural characteristics that really are establishing a block there. This is another one. Now, this is the Longfellow School, so this is just a little farther south. Now, there was a conditional rezoning that is still into effect. This is currently zoned R3. It is, the area shaded there is 7.8 acres, just for some clarity. But if, this conditional rezoning does revert back, if construction does not begin, a planned unit residential development, if this ordinance change could happen here, where again, the developer is getting flexibility, but they're getting some, going through some extra hoops of having a development agreement, creating design guidelines, of creating a unified plan development in a certain area. Another one, this is the Franklin School off of Franklin Street. Right now, it's zoned R1. It is 9.1 acres. Any development would need to follow a single-family residential development. And again, that could still follow the R1. This is an optional zoning district, but the PURD is a tool that a developer would have to redevelop to do that. And then I have one more here, and this is just north of South Boulevard at Going Street, and I'm forgetting the cross street there. But this is 1.7 acres. This is another area that, potentially, you notice there's different lot sizes that are there, and this potentially could be utilized for redevelopment. These are just examples. There are many other cases for that, but I just wanted to point out that while anyone could go forward with a single-family residential home, on a lot that has a certain a wide enough lot width, there really, if you're building a larger development, there really is not the flexibility tool of a PURD that is available in most communities. When we were doing research, most communities in Oakland County, particularly from here south, do not have a requirement of size. It is very unusual because we're built out. So we have a section of the ordinance that can't be invoked because we don't have 25 acres in land that was not previously subdivided. So this ordinance really eliminates that acreage requirement. It's very simple in what it's proposing to do, and eliminates the previously unsubdivided requirement of the plan unit residential development. Now, they're still going to have to follow the Michigan Land Development Division Act, to ensure, but we have no doubt that that'll be followed through this process if anyone plans that. So staff's recommendation to Planning Commission is approval of this zoning text amendment in their Planning Commission's recommendation to City Council. I do have 2 sample motions up there. So thank you.
Do we want to have discussion about this? Any comments? Mike?
I like it.
And just a point of order, if you look at the bottom of page 2, we have retooled the agenda, but at the bottom of page 2, we've kind of streamlined a little bit the public hearing process, and definitely after the public hearing, we'd be happy to take any questions you may have. So,
Mark, did you say we didn't have any PURDs in the city?
we're not aware of any PURDs. When we were looking at some of the subdivisions that were developed in the early 2000s, they were, what we've found from research is they were developed in other ways. Stonegate was developed using a mixed-use district, so that was a different part of our text ordinance. But even Fieldstone, which is up on the very northeast corner, they were just doing subdivision plats under the old, ordinance, and there was not even a site plan required at that time.
Okay, I thought Stonegate was one.
Stonegate was under mixed use, but not the plan unit.
Okay, that's my only question. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess I'm a little confused. It seems at best redundant, possibly could raise some conflicts. I know there should be, and I think there's 1 or 2 phrases in there where it says may and if possible, but the information that's delivered to justify the PUD seems like it's the same information that would have to be delivered to justify any exceptions or anything that we would make toward redeveloping an area. And if they're not making any changes to redeveloping an area, why would they use a PUD? I was just trying to get a feel for how this tool would help expedite, maybe possibly bring folks in to develop in the city and still be consistent with the developments that we already have in the city. I think the initial statement in the current ordinance is that it's not subdivided and 25 acres. And I could see where that would be enticing for someone to come in to be able to get this plot of land and pretty much a clean sheet of paper, but everything in the city is subdivided just about. And I'm saying, oh, well. And there's very few plots of 25 acres still out there, maybe the golf course or something like that, but
So
other than that.
Can you explain and maybe I'll answer this in the same thing, but if somebody has 5 acres, can you explain how they'd use the PUD?
Yeah. Essentially, what you would do in a PUD for 5 acres, or 25 acres for that going forward, if this were to be adopted, is you would file a petition to the city staff, like a rezoning, and then it would go to Planning Commission. But what you're looking to do here is you may be asking for housing styles or housing materials that are different than what we permit in our residential districts. You may be looking at different housing sizes that are less than 1,200 square foot minimum, and this is different than the residential infill overlay district. You may be looking at smaller lot widths. You may be looking at a residential development that you're creating parkland. You might be creating, townhomes in lieu of single-family homes. They may still be single-family. They may be split apart. But again, there's housing flexibility that designed with this. Mr. Castro, do you have anything to add, that why a developer would want to go through a PURD as opposed to our normal zoning ordinance?
Nothing more than you've said already. Other than, again, there's just in the city not enough acreage for a developer to likely find it attractive with being 25 acres. And like you had mentioned, the unsubdivided parcels just don't exist. And I got to imagine that's more than likely why there aren't any currently. So removing these from the current ordinance might make it more attractive. On those examples that you said that are, as you indicated, are not subject at all or going up for a PURD, maybe those are a potential opportunity for a developer to look at, even though they're only 1 to 2 acres. But I have nothing further, I suppose.
And if I could add, let me just use an example. Let's say someone wants to come in and they want to have a smaller rear yard setback than what's normally permitted. It's 30 feet typically. Maybe they want to have a tighter configuration and do 20 feet. Unlike a rezoning, Planning Commission and City Council is getting to negotiate. So the developer's having to put forward, some things that in the development overall, this planned development that will balance out in the overall development. Maybe that's in park space, maybe that's in aesthetics. And so really it is an opportunity to negotiate flexibility, but for the good of everybody, that there's some give and take when it comes to some of these regulations.
Open for public comment? Is that where we're
Yep.
going? Or
Yep.
any other questions, comments?
I'll reserve my comments until after the public hearing has been completed.
Okay. You get to do that.
No.
I don't know how to do that. Don't talk more for 3 minutes because we don't know how to run the clock. So.
Oh, I do.
On the job
I just
training.
didn't want to touch that.
Oh, no, I'll do the hammer. I can handle that. All right, opening for public comment now. All right, closing. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, how you doing?
Very good. I got to go quickly, so I'm glad I got a chance to come here and go first. My question is, it sounds like the PURDs were for larger volumes of land, and you showed a variety of types of, from 1.7 to 7. So what is the determining amount of acreage that's needed to allow some flexibility into an existing? It's almost like you're spot zoning, letting us do some different things in an existing zoning requirements. So what is going to be the minimum to allow someone to do some development like that? I think it opens the door, in my mind, to an established area that allows now somebody to come in and call it a PUD and have different requirements than everybody else that's around them. That's what it appeared to me. And I'm not saying that that's totally bad, but it could make the people there who's already been up under different requirements feel like, wow, why do they allow this to happen if they're not in conformity with it, if they don't feel good about it coming in their community? So what is a minimum that would be allowed for something like this? Was my comment on it. And I don't know if you answer right now, but those are kind of things that I see when that's probably, as Ms. Norcroft was saying, we don't have unplotted land of that magnitude in our city. So now if we do start allowing this, what will be some requirements, some minimum requirements to allow it to happen? That will be a concern of mine.
I think we can answer that after, probably. Next. Go ahead. He said his name, so.
Good afternoon, Council. Planning Committee Council. My concern, Carlton hit the nail on the spot, but it's to his part one. Part two is that if you allow, based on your conversation, the 25 acres, agree, everything surrounding can be bought out. And once it's bought out, it's knocking a community out. This is how I'm feeling it. For example, let's look at M1. M1, I'm quite sure, is the old General Motors spot. And they're actually buying out around them. They bought up, I say, about 30% of the properties over there across the street. So my concern, because you never had the PUD, why now? Why now try to enforce this when it's not a necessary, since all of Pontiac lands is actually chopped up? We don't have prime properties. We have old homes, true enough. People are living in those homes. You can't squeeze something into a community without knocking out the little man.
Anyone else? All right, we're going to close public comment.
So staff considered a minimum, so the minimum right now today is 25 acres. We considered having a minimum. We were working with certain acreages. But in doing further research and talking through this with other jurisdictions that in their regulations, having not a minimum period is the recommendation going forward. And why? So I understand the concern about, well, if you've got something that's a half acre, could someone apply for a PURD? They could. They have a lot more hoops to jump through. Normally, you just be going through the building inspection. You're not even coming to Planning Commission. And you're setting up the ability to go to Planning Commission, City Council. There's possible deed restrictions. There's a whole process. So the odds of something happening under an acre are possible, but there are extra hoops to go through. So it would have to be in such a planned, organized way that is a benefit to either the builder, the developer, something like that. We're more likely to see these on lands that are more than an acre. And we've had this ordinance in place for a long time. And the reason why we're making this change at this time is both the 2014 master plan and the draft master plan are saying very similar things of providing housing flexibility. And one of the most common ways of doing that is utilizing a PURD. And it is it's an optional thing, but it requires a plan development and provides some flexibility to work with the technical review body of Planning Commission and work with City Council to get that adopted. There are certain things in our zoning ordinance that limit the amount of, multiples, particularly in R1 districts, so you're not having big clusters of development real close to each other, but sometimes providing that flexibility in terms of setbacks, in terms of design is extremely helpful. We have a lot of vacant properties in the city, and, one of the reasons we haven't seen redevelopment, particularly with residential, is largely because we don't have a PURD. And PURD often leads to home ownership. You don't often see, while you might see it in a big apartment complex, you often see this as home ownership, not necessarily rental. And so I think this is a very good proactive change that we can make to the ordinance to help the city out.
And if I can clarify, this is only residential, correct?
This is only residential. There's no changes to our mixed-use ordinance at this time. There's no minimum requirement for the MUD ordinance.
Okay, thank you.
So.
Thank you for clarifying that, Mark. And this still gives the community the opportunity to come out. It actually gives them more input into a development than it normally would.
Correct.
With this process.
That is correct.
Because it comes before planning and city council.
And it's a public hearing at planning.
Okay, thank
And
you.
there's development agreements built into it. So that those enforcement, that sort of shaping it can happen in ways that we normally wouldn't see because there's more tools in the toolbox with a planned unit residential development or PURD. That's what I've seen in other communities. And so that would be, is that your assessment as well, that it would have more leverage from the city to see something more substantial, increase the caliber, quality? Okay.
The development agreements are an extremely important tool that I think we would like to see in the city to really ensure that what is being proposed is actually followed up with and give some leverage in negotiating with any potential applicant.
Okay, any other comments? Go ahead.
Just a question. Let's say we do have a acre of land that a person wants to develop and develop in a certain way today. And they come and they look for certain variances, and they look for certain allowances. Isn't that about the same thing? What would be the difference between a person that wants to get into a little change in the face of the housing or some other item like a setback, and they're willing to offer some other amenities for those setbacks? What would be the difference from them doing that package of doing a series of agreements along with conditional items that they would write up and submit from doing something under a PUD?
That's an excellent question. So on the surface, it may seem like, okay, it's very similar, but the goal of a PURD is to avoid variances. You know, when you're applying for a variance, you're in theory just trying to say there's a physical hardship that's preventing me from aligning with the code. And what this is doing through the PURD process is aligning with the zoning code, aligning with the process that you're creating. You're getting a special approval for this development, and it's more of a path forward. You have to prove your hardship in a variance where you're negotiating with the city through Planning Commission and City Council, you know, for these specific allowances through in a PURD. So, and the goal of any zoning code is to mitigate and have as few variances as possible. So, you know, the cleaner way to do it is through a PURD as opposed to going through variances. And this would avoid that process.
Okay, I was viewing zoning ordinances more toward spurring development to go in a certain direction, as opposed to just avoiding variances. I was looking at zoning ordinances allowing maybe seemingly disparate developments to be placed into an area as long as they met the zoning requirements, and that the specifications and the things that we have in the zoning ordinance would be such that it allow maximum flexibility, but at the same time still protect the residents around it from any situations. And I was just trying to see how that's my understanding. Now, I might be wrong in that assumption. That might be where I'm wrong in that assumption.
But through the PURD process, Planning Commission and City Council are really essentially trying to do that as well. But, you know, with zoning code, there are specific regulations you have for each zoning district, and, you know, the city needs to adhere to those. But the PURD gives a property owner the flexibility to have this alternative process if it is approved.
Just seems like another tool with a possible constraint removed that may not, that might at the same time open up the surrounding neighbors already there to some issues.
But you don't know that until you see an application. And that's where Planning Commission and City Council, you know, really get to review this in the context of the neighborhood that the proposal is.
Now, one of the things that was absent in the PUD was the requirement that the developer demonstrate that they would meet city ordinances in their design. I mean, that's kind of foggy out there. There's not a real requirement. And I asked that just from past history with, I think, a great development that happened with M1, except for the fatal flaw of missing some of the city ordinances. And I don't think we asked for that in some ways. Although it was implied that it should happen because the ordinance is on the book. But at the same time, you know, the development agreements and the other things didn't specifically ask for that. And as we even go through and we look at our requirements For instance, in the special exception, as we look at the different things that we ask to be checked off, we don't specifically ask for developers to pick up all of the performance specs that were under, I think, Article 4. We don't ask for them to demonstrate that their design meets all of that.
And respectfully, Commissioner Northcross, I think those are very valid points. Oh, thank you. Respectfully, I think those are very valid points, but that's under the MUD ordinance, that's under the rest of the zoning ordinance. Tonight's PUD is for residential development. Residential development is not spurring some of these, things about noise and light. These are actually residential homes, residential developments. They, when a application comes forward, you're going to see the proposal for parking, you're going to see the proposal for landscaping, you're going to see the proposal for stormwater. But in general, these are not land use. For this ordinance that's before you, this is not invoking negative effects on neighboring properties. Obviously, when something is developed, a neighbor's going to know it. There's going to be more activity there, but these lands are already zoned residential, and so it's really just getting an infill population for these districts. And so it's a little bit with a different lens than the MUD ordinance is.
Okay, should we?
If
make
I
a
may,
motion?
just a statement that my hesitancy comes from my uncertainty that we will have developers actually own their projects and be able to demonstrate to us that there will not be any negligible, that there will not be any harmful effects from their projects as they go forward.
But if I may, we wouldn't, they have to bring it to us still. So all we're doing is taking the limit to apply. They don't have to apply, be at 25 acres or more. So somebody with 5 acres can come to us in the planning department and negotiate. So they can't, we're not going to let that happen. We're just giving more opportunities for people to bring that to us.
If I may, we don't require that today. And now we're removing another constraint further and still have but still have what I consider to be a hole in our ordinance in not requiring our developers to actually, what I call, own their projects and make sure that we're not going to have any deleterious effects to the folks around us. We really don't call that out in any of our ordinances, and that concerns me, especially as our density of land use increases. That means that we're getting more and more people next to each other. But at the same time, if we can have better specs, I think we have folks able to, in their design, better understand how they can fit it in or not fit it in. And those designs that do fit in, come on in. Let's go with them. And those that don't, well, maybe it's better that you go somewhere else. And I see the PUD, continuing and possibly even amplifying the effects or the deleterious effects from not having that in our current base ordinance of developers actually owning their designs.
And if I can just add to that, really when you get a planning commission receives an application and reviews it, you have the ability for input not only of conditions, but also of deed restrictions and covenants through a PURD, which is not the case in other types of developments, such as a site plan. And, if there is something specific in that proposal that is a measurable, quantifiable, thing, Planning Commission as a whole can, definitely recommend that to be, either, depending on what type of requirement it is, a covenant or restriction. But, this is providing flexibility to review that in each individual case.
Well, okay. Yeah, I still have problems with that.
You make a motion?
I move to recommend approval of the zoning text amendment as presented.
Support.
All right, Commissioner McGinnis,
Yes to approve.
Commissioner Sinclair,
Yes to approve.
Commissioner Northcross,
No to deny.
Commissioner Shepard.
Yes to approve.
Motion passes.
With three? Excuse me.
Yeah,
Three, it's just a majority of this here and not a quorum on this type of thing? Do we need a full quorum, or do we just need a majority of the people present?
Majority of the people present.
Okay, thank
And
you.
this one is solely a recommendation too, so, but it is just a majority. Good question.
so we're moving on to number 9, old business?
Public
Oh,
comment.
public comment?
Yep.
Okay. Open for public comment? Oh, yeah, okay, good. See, you should have done this. No, I will, but you have 3 minutes. Please state your name and address.
Oh, let me take 10.
Yeah. How about 2? No.
Public, we don't have, for public comment, you have to give your address. But I mean, if you want it, you can have it. I mean,
Yeah. Go.
you want it?
What's that? To do what?
You want my address?
Please, yeah, just for the formal
Hold
stuff.
up.
We already,
I've been married for 12
we almost have it
years.
memorized, but, yeah.
Darlene Clark of Williams, 506 Nebraska Avenue, Pontiac. Okay? So here's a question that I do understand that the council and planning work together. But the heart, supposedly, because I kind of see and I respect that. But the things, the plans start here. The destination and design, the foresee, the future starts here. The people voices appear not to be heard. I understand that you have a duty to be negative and not to take sides, and that's understandable. But Pontiac is an old building that you're trying to squeeze new things into without taking care of the old things. So eventually the old is going to be pushed off to the side. And by squeezing everything in, you're over flooding. It's like, you know how you get a glass of water and you pour it and the water go all flood over? That's what it appears that you are doing to Pontiac. I am a resident of Pontiac. I live in Pontiac all my life. I understand each and every one of you more than you think, like a mother understands their child. Believe me when I say that. But I don't really think you see the vision for Pontiac. I understand Mark has to do his job. Now, I don't know if he's doing things for the master plan or for the future of the good of Pontiac. That bothers me really bad. Because you cannot squeeze out old when the old just need to be fixed. It just need a leg up, not pushed out. And the homes that's being come in here and the businesses that come in here, they're not quality businesses. They're crackerjack homes being put up, which probably last you maybe 5 or 10 years. Businesses come in, probably going to last you, hey, come and go. That's not the future of Pontiac. Pontiac has always seen way across the river for longevity. Our strength comes from that, not for just a temporary fix. You say Pontiac has a lot of land. In your mind, it maybe looks like a lot of land, but the Pontiac is the one who's neglecting the land. Oakland County is the one who's neglecting the land. So when you neglect the land and don't do what you're supposed to, and you're trying to put something over to cover it, you're going to have a bigger problem. And that's what's coming here now. We have bigger problems in Pontiac and just trying to get affordable housing in here.
Any other comments?
Yes.
Yeah, that's fine. Go ahead, please. State your name and address for the record, please.
In the interest of time, I'll just start talking. My name's Brett Reynolds, 50 Dakota, and I'm also representing some neighbors on Mohawk. My mother lives at 59 Mohawk. We did receive a letter, so forgive me for being flummoxed, but we received a letter, and I don't understand how electronically republishing something is appropriate when letters have been sent to the citizens. Because there are other people people asked me specifically to come because they were concerned about this letter that they received. This was postmarked the 15th. So usually on an agenda, there's a revision date that it was revised. If something is revised, you put a revision date on it. that said, excuse me, 11 Mohawk. We're concerned about this application. It refers to a Ms. Gonzalez as the owner of the property. And in the report, nowhere does it mention that it's actually owned by AMG Visionary Group, LLC. So I don't understand why the petitioner's name is an individual who lives in California with with a foreign entity from Wyoming doing business in Michigan is the owner of the property. I'm curious to know as to when this illegally divided structure was, because it states that it's operating as a duplex in the plan. But is it operating as a legal duplex or is it an illegal duplex? Was it originally an owner-occupied duplex, which we need a distinction in the city for owner-occupied properties, duplexes, multifamily, because they build both resident ownership and then that extra income stream, increasing the number of residents in the city. Gonzalez is a member of a speculation group. That doesn't matter. Her LLC is registered. This is a kind of ownership that residents of my neighborhood would like to see less of. Mohawk is a fire route. These are deficiencies in the report. Mohawk is a fire route. It has no parking in front of this building. There is parking across the street, but it is so near the corner that the stop sign limits the parking all the way nearly to the front of this property. The report misconstrues the nature of my neighborhood. I live in Indian Village. Indian Village is bordered by Osceola Drive. We are the streets with Native American names. When you get to Waldo, you are in a different subdivision. You're in a different neighborhood. The two family units that are discussed don't exist until you get to Waldo, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Good? No? Sir, go ahead. State your name and address, please.
My name is Rich Blanchard. I live at 4776 Granger Road in Oxford, Mailing. I own 15 Mohawk directly next door to there. I've owned it since 1986. My understanding is that that was originally an R2 back in the day. I looked at that house in 1986. I knew the guy that owned it. I don't remember his name right off, but he worked at St. Joe's Hospital with my sister, and I had worked there back in the 70s. And I looked at that house, and I thought, because it had the garages behind it, that was a total misconsumption anyway. But I ended up buying the house next door, 15 Mohawk. And I only saw the zoning map. I was R1, and he was R2. And I understand at some point they changed that. And now he's asking to go back to that. I didn't see a problem with it. Do you know when it was changed from R2 to R1?
We'll try to answer. If we're going to answer, we're going to answer it at the end of the.
Okay, I think. All right.
Thank you. Mark, do you want to? If you want to close the public hearing, all right, I'm going to close the public hearing.
So the oldest zoning map that I've been able to find on record is 2004. And so we often reference this just for the history of properties. Unfortunately, we don't have anything older than that. It's been R1 as long as we know. There is a document evidence through code enforcement of when the previous owner of 11 Mohawk was under construction for this to convert it, and it was not permitted. It needs to go through that process. The new owner's going through this rezoning is a first step process, and then they're going to have to complete the requirements, including for parking, if the rezoning is approved for this conversion. So some of that stuff will happen. Thank you for sharing, some of that information. But from the city's records, this has been a single-family residential home for some time. I don't know how long, but for some time, at least going back the last 15 years. Yeah, I think that's it, unless there's anything else.
Mr. Acting Chair.
I was just trying to look at the map of it, so go ahead.
Can I add something, Mark?
Sure.
Is there any way for next month's agenda to show an aerial photo of the property lines on this address.
Sure.
And I strongly encourage every planning commissioner that is here this evening to go out and look at the site. Drive behind it, down Mohawk, just so we're
That's what we should be doing anyways.
educated. Well, a lot of times we look at Google Maps and, you know, everybody's busy. This is a volunteer position. We're not paid. But I really think this one involves a site visit and the street signs are missing, so it is difficult to find. Hopefully you have navigation. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Mr. McGinnis?
A member of the public spoke about it being noticed and then not on tonight's agenda. Planning Manager Yandrick, the City Council, and the city increased the requirements for notice of a rezoning request, including posting of signage at the property. Is that what didn't happen?
That is correct. And
Okay.
so per the ordinance, the public hearing could not take place tonight. The applicant was notified on Monday. Unfortunately, with us being out for illnesses and vacations and stuff like that, the notice took place a little later than expected. We apologize for this mistake, but the public hearing cannot take place.
And that responsibility is on the applicant, correct? They have to pay, they undertake that posting. So if they screw it up, or don't do it in the right timeline, they are screwing up their request. It can't proceed with a public hearing.
That is correct.
Okay.
And Mark, this will be on the April
Second.
2nd agenda?
Yep.
And it will be also open to another public hearing.
And there will be another notice that is mailed out to everyone that lives within 500 feet.
Good. Any other comments? Good. On to number 9?
Yep. Corey's got this presentation.
All right, so unfortunately, it does seem that our applicant is not here tonight. However, due to the fact that this is a simple one-year extension request for a case that you've already heard and approved previously, I'm hoping you'll still consider it tonight. So I'm going to go through my presentation. This is for Troy Equity. This was a new manufacturing facility at 1420 North Telegraph Road. They received site plan and special exception approval from this body in February of 2024. And our zoning ordinance states that if they do not apply for their final site plan within 1 year, the approval expires. They have reached out to us ahead of that deadline, requesting an extension of a further year in order to get some of their financing in place.
All right. Any discussions?
Wait, hold on. I have a presentation.
Oh, really?
It's just a couple slides just for orientation and stuff.
If you don't want me to do it, I don't have to.
Follow the procedures.
Most of this is the information I already provided to you. They are requesting a one-year extension. The approval was on February 7th, 2024. According to section 6.207A3, the Planning Commission has the authority to extend their approvals up to 2 years in one-year intervals. So if they need a further extension for that second year, they would have to come back before you next year. I give the dates here, their preliminary approval. Some of the work they've been doing in the last year is one of the conditions Planning Commission gave them was that they had to get ZBA variances. They worked on that and they secured those on June 18th of 2024. Due to the large investment this project represents, the applicant is requesting more time to prepare financially. Just to remind you, this was the development off of North Telegraph Road. That wooded area, the only development currently there is a cell tower. They will be, it used to be, I believe, train track yard, and so they're looking to build a factory there and parking area. There's the proposed site plan that was approved by Planning Commission last year. And with that, staff's recommendation is for a one-year extension of the site plan and special exception request, and here are some sample motions.
Mr. Chair,
Any comments?
I move to approve the requested extension of SPR 23-030 and SEP 24-001 for 1420 North Telegraph Road for 1 year.
Support.
Do we have, can I ask a question? Do we have to open it up for public comment or anything like that?
No.
No, okay.
All right, Commissioner Northcross,
Yes to approve.
Commissioner Sinclair,
Yes to approve.
Commissioner McGinnis,
Yes to approve.
Commissioner Shepard.
Yes to approve.
Motion passes.
Microphone? All right, I'll do it again. Number 10, application number SPR 25002. Applicant Chris Toma.
Hello, my name is Michael Jonah, and this is Chris Toma.
Corey's going to give a presentation first, and then you guys will be up second.
Corey's been getting his exercise in today.
All right. So this is for a new light manufacturing facility at 49730 Woodward Avenue. This is a site plan review. The proposed use is use permitted by right, so there's no associated special exception. This is just a straight site plan. It is C3, corridor commercial, located on the outer ring of the loop, and it is less than an acre at 0.75. The applicant is proposing to reuse 2 of the existing single-story brick structures on site. If you are familiar with the site, you know that it is composed of what are rundown buildings or have been rundown buildings sitting there, many old manufacturing facilities it's been sitting vacant for quite some time now. They plan to keep building A and B, which are identified on the site plans, while demolishing the rest. In place of the demolished building, the applicant is proposing a parking area and a new building, building C on the site plans. The site is legally non-conforming, with the side and rear setbacks being much less than is required by the ordinance, up to almost, I think, a 0-foot setback. The applicant is proposing an off-site parking lot across Woodward. However, our ordinance prohibits off-site parking lots if it requires people to walk across a major thoroughfare. So for that reason, this proposed parking lot, while they can propose this parking lot, the spaces on it cannot count towards that parking total because it requires people to walk across Woodward Avenue. City records indicate the structure was built in 1962. It is unclear what the most recent use has been, but the structure has been vacant for over a decade. The existing structure is in poor condition, and the applicant is seeking to bring the property up to code. So I don't have the laser, which makes this a little harder, but you can see the property outlined in that green-blue. It is off of Woodward Avenue. Sorry, I wasn't sure. At that intersection, if it becomes... All right, it's off of Cass Avenue, sandwiched between the avenue and the railroad tracks. There is commercial/industrial development to the north. To the south, it appears vacant. Across the street is residential. In terms of zoning, to the north and south is C3, which is that moderate density commercial. Across the street, inside the loop, is C2, that's our downtown district. On the other side of the railroad tracks, R2, residential. These photos were taken last week, February 28th. They show you some of the existing conditions on site. And then here's the proposed site plan. You can see the hashed buildings are the ones proposed to remain. The large building C, kind of in the middle there, that is the new build proposed. The rear lot line is going to be consistent with building B, and so for that reason, it's permitted to be that close to the rear lot line. There is proposed parking sandwiched between building A and building C. There is also a loading space attached to building C. There will be 2 entrances off of Woodward Avenue. This is the proposed front facade. You can see to the left, that kind of bricked area, that's the existing building. To the right, almost as a separate building, that is existing. And then what is proposed new is in the middle. One of the elements that they will have to address is 40% transparency is a requirement of the ordinance. It does not appear that the proposed facade meets that requirement. So in terms of zoning ordinance compliance, in terms of consistency with the C3 corridor commercial mixed-use district requirements, the applicant is proposing to reuse some of the existing structures on site while replacing some and adding a parking area. The existing setbacks to the front, rear, and side are grandfathered. The proposed addition is no higher than the existing structure at 29 feet and 1.5 inches. In terms of compliance with the street front requirements, the plans will need to be revised to provide the area of each building material on the front facade. Primary building materials, which are brick, masonry, block, may not be less than 60% of the facade, while accent materials such as metal may not compose more than 10%. I'll need the area of each material, as well as the area of transparency on the front facade. At least 40% has to be transparent. In addition to this, no mechanical equipment can be seen from the road, so a statement on the plans verifying that would meet that requirement. In terms of location of the parking areas, I already identified the issue with the parking area proposed across the street. Because of this issue, only the 27 parking spaces provided on-site can count towards meeting the 60 parking space requirement. That is a 33 space deficiency. The applicant will need to either secure a waiver from this body or a variance, or reconfigure their site plan to meet the parking requirement. Other parking requirements, the site plan should be revised to provide the required number of bike spaces. There has to be at least one for each 20 parking spaces. In terms of maneuvering lane, if we could just have that information provided on the site plans, and if the site plans could be revised to provide the striping color of the parking lot. In terms of surfacing, please revise the site plans to indicate what the parking lot will be striped in, or surfaced in, sorry. In terms of landscaping, the plans do appear to be compliant. The applicant is proposing 5 new canopy trees to comply with the requirement for parking lots adjacent to the right-of-way. Due to the parking lot being less than 40 spaces, there are no additional trees required within the parking area. The property abuts a railroad right-of-way to the rear and commercial C3 zoning to the north and south. For this reason, no landscape buffer is necessary. In terms of exterior lighting, the proposed exterior lighting is downward directed, fully shielded, and will not exceed the foot candle maximums for the property. In terms of the subjective standards for approval for circulation, the site plans will need to be revised to provide a parking plan that doesn't require customers or employees to cross Woodward Avenue, either a parking waiver or a variance or a reconfigured site. In terms of the buildings, the existing and proposed building would not appear to present any adverse impacts on adjacent properties, and no buffering is necessary. In terms of natural features, there are none in need of preservation. In terms of site layout and screening, no screening is required, and the proposed site plan presents a significant improvement in layout for the site compared to the existing structure, which consumes nearly the entire property. And so with that, well, actually, in terms of compliance with the zoning ordinance, the following information will need to be provided: maneuvering lane width, parking lot striping color, surface material, statement about mechanical equipment, and a statement addressing the performance standards found in the zoning ordinance. Furthermore, the following changes will need to be made to the site plan. 1, the off-site parking lot must be removed from the site plans. 2, the front facade must be revised to comply with the zoning ordinance requirement for building materials. And 3, at least 1 bike space must be provided for every 20 parking spaces. And so with that, staff's recommendation is approval with the following 5 conditions. The site plans be revised to include all the information I previously mentioned. The off-site parking lot is addressed. I feel like I've said this many times now. The front facade will have to be revised to address the percent coverage of each material that I pointed out. The bike space will have to be provided, and the Planning Commission will have to consider granting 33 parking space waiver. And with that, here are some sample motions.
Thank you, Corey. I just wanted to add for Planning Commission, so the proposal from the applicant tonight is to redevelop the site. It does require the site plan, as Corey mentioned, but there is not a specific user. They're hoping to redevelop this site to help entice future users. There could, come through here. The idea is that this would be for light manufacturing, and what Corey's analysis was for light manufacturing and the parking requirements for light manufacturing. Any other land use that requires additional parking or is a distinct change of this may have to get an additional zoning approval. The applicant's aware of that, but I just wanted to kind of there's nothing wrong with the applicant putting a proposal, and I think it should be welcome, at least from a staff standpoint, of redeveloping this building, hoping to entice a user to come in, but we don't know what business or businesses will be coming in here. So thank you.
All right. Go ahead and state your name and address for the record, please.
Michael Jonah. We are 49730 Woodward Road is the property address. Appreciate you guys having us here today. So I wanted to speak on the parking lot. As we talked about it, we looked at it, would like to do a shuttle service in the morning and the afternoon to be able to use that parking lot. I'd like you guys to consider that. I think,
So you guys need that at this point?
I don't know if we need it, so let me reiterate. As they said earlier, we don't have a use today.
Right.
You might get 10 employees, you may get 25 employees, you may get 30 employees. I don't know today, but I know we always have to prepare for the worst, hope for the best. As we know, you don't know as landlords it's always an issue. It comes up, and I'd like you guys to consider that or give us a variance, whatever you guys propose. Let me know your feedback on that.
If I can ask a question, how is the Woodward Loop going to affect that? Or is this not time to ask questions on that?
I can't answer that question. It's not approved, so for me to tell you, I don't have that in front of me today. So I don't, you tell me.
I guess that's
Yeah,
a 4-year plan.
that's for you to tell me what it's gonna, I don't know yet. Hopefully they buy it from me. How's that?
Right, that'd be good. So I shouldn't be asking you questions. I should let you tell what you want to tell, and then we're going to ask you a bunch of questions.
So that was the offset plate. The site plan would be revised to include the information items identified. So the facade, Mark and I, which is my engineer from Fairway Engineering, and our architect will address that, so that's not an issue. The bike space Willie will address. That's new to me. I did not see that, so we apologize. And parking spaces, I think there was one other thing that you guys asked. Can we go back to your comments? Striping, we'll get you that. Extra was fine. Landscape was fine.
Surfacing?
Surfacing's gonna be asphalt.
Okay.
We are gonna resurface it to asphalt. I don't know if we have that, but obviously it'll be 21 AA.
Head back to the microphone so we keep you on record, so.
It'll be 21 AA. It'll be done like a parking lot, and then 4 inches of asphalt. It'll be prepared, as a normal parking lot. We're gonna obviously pull all the old stuff out. As we know, we ran out of time. Winter came hard. There's like 14 inches of frost in the ground, so we couldn't grade it out and get the rest of the, and plus we were told not to get the concrete out because we didn't want it to erode onto Woodward. So we're gonna wait till better weather. Once we get approval from you guys, and we're hoping to walk out of here and have a vision and start ordering the buildings and get a plan going. So I think we're good. You guys let us know what you want from us.
Chair, can I ask a follow-up question? Where do you have or where do you hope to install your mechanical equipment? Your AC, your coolers, was it on the roof? Was it on the back of the building? Is that something that has been designed yet? Okay.
It's not designed yet, but I believe on the roof. We're gonna have to put, it'll have to go on the back of the roof. We'll have to, obviously engineer that, and it'll be hidden from Woodward. It'll be back by the train tracks.
And we'll work with you if any parapets are needed. I think Corey addressed that in his report, but we can work with you at final site
I'm gonna
plan.
sound a little arrogant right now, but anything that goes there is gonna be better than what's there now. I promise you guys.
It better be, right?
It already is better.
Right.
Good.
Hey, guys, my name is Chris Toma, also 49730 Woodward Avenue. So we're 3 partners here. The other partner has been in the city of Pontiac for over a decade. Walter Schwartz, he owns the property on Pike Street. And we've done like 12 buildings together, close to like 250,000 square feet. This is like probably the biggest one for as much work we're doing. And we bought the property in June, and we followed the protocol. We got the demolition permits. The day after we bought it, we cleaned it up. I mean, everybody knows that's been a big eyesore for the city, and I'm pretty sure we're going to get a great company there. And we've already got some proposals. We put it out there, coming soon to market. And I think this is going to be a great thing for the city. And I grew up in Oak Park, which is southern Oakland County, and I always wanted to do something in Pontiac, and I'm very excited about this project.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Questions?
No question.
No questions?
Yeah, I Well, one, thank you for coming to Pontiac, and
Thank you
I
for having
agree
us.
that there's already been an improvement in that area. I was just looking at the parking lot across the street, and I guess I don't know how that would be handled in terms of a shuttle service. Right now, I guess there is a stoplight very near that parking lot at the intersection of Cask and Wide Track, and there are crosswalks. The only issue is that the lights are timed alternately, so that as Wide Track is flowing, Cass is stopped, and as Cass is flowing, Wide Track is stopped.
It's like this.
And some of the people that drive that every day coming off of Cass know how to time that light so they zip right in, and there's not a big space that there would normally be to try and walk across there. That was probably the biggest issue, is that thing
Shuttle
of,
service,
of
I don't know.
parking.
I want to work with you guys. So whatever we can do to come to an agreement, I'd really appreciate it.
Yeah, and then also I noticed there's one handicap parking space right now.
That's according to whatever zoning or ordinances. I think there's two.
That's handicap there.
Yeah, the one.
Okay,
I gotta look. I don't have
didn't
the
think
plan
that
in
was
front of me.
handicap.
I'm getting older. I can't see.
Two. Yeah, I was thinking with that off-site parking, there may be a need that if the additional parking is needed off-site, even with a shuttle service, there may be a need to have more handicap parking immediately
Absolutely.
adjacent to the building.
We can make some of the.
Yeah, we can figure it out. Yeah, we can.
add a few spots.
Wherever ADA, I think those two spots. We'll
Now-
look at that. That wouldn't be an issue.
I guess my other question for tonight, are we looking at approval of the site plan with these items up in the air, or is this just directional speaking, where the site plan would come back to us with these conditions addressed and the next step in place?
So we're bringing this forward to you tonight for a decision. This is not an informational session. However, the commission always has the right to postpone.
We will take an approval with the conditions that these are approved to get our permit.
Okay.
So I will come forward and ask that for you guys. We've been very diligent with everybody trying to get this moved forward. So I would love for you guys to take that into consideration.
Now, how is that conditional? How are the conditions going to be handled? Is this going to be like a contract that's worked out between the city and the applicant?
So the conditions will be handled the same way that all site plan review conditions are handled. The applicant has to demonstrate compliance before the final site plan is issued. By staff.
Correct.
Okay, and right now, we don't know what those conditions will be?
They're right
So
there stated.
we have these 5 here that we have proposed for you.
Okay, so in the approval, then, the off-site parking will be spoken to be approved by the planning staff, whatever remedy they come up with.
Well, one of them, number 5, it shows that we would be granting a waiver of 33 parking spaces because the off-site, so you own that parking lot?
We own it.
Okay.
Yes. Came with the property.
Okay, cool. So when it was the bottling, Coca-Cola bottling,
Yes.
the employees must have been across the street for it. It's just that per our zoning requirements, it cannot be counted because it's across a major thoroughfare.
Precisely. So what this condition does would be to allow the applicant to use that parking lot and propose whatever remedy they have in order to get their employees to the site. However, all that is being asked of the commission is the waiver of 33 spaces.
So,
But they would have to come in the future, let's say they got Aqua Tots as a tenant, and there's tons of customers, tons of cars, so they would have to come with a revised, how would that work? A revised site plan, or?
So if a new use is being proposed for the site that is not light manufacturing, it would be treated as a new zoning application, and they would have to demonstrate compliance. So this waiver of 33 spaces applies to light manufacturing at this location.
Okay.
so mind if I speak?
Sure, go ahead.
So we're mostly looking for like distribution, light manufacturing, as Corey mentioned. We own a building in Westland that's 24,000 square feet with 3 different addresses. And believe it or not, the building is 100% occupied today. And all the users, my main user for the 12,000 square foot use is Nuve, which is the EV charging. They're based in San Diego. And they only come to work, 3 employees come to work once a month, because that's like when they distribute the product out. My middle unit, he uses it as debt storage. And the 3rd unit, he's down the street, he uses it as debt storage as well. So in today's world, especially with the way people work from home a lot, this problem here might not even be a problem for the parking.
Right.
I have a famous line. I don't have a crystal ball, but what we're seeing is what Chris is speaking about.
That is the trend in a lot of our properties. I mean, we really don't have that. The parking, I understand, is the issue, but it might not really be an issue for the tenants.
What's the final square footage proposed?
For the new building or all 3?
All 3?
About 28,000.
What is it, Mark?
Okay.
It's
Is that right, Mike? About 28,000.
the square footage here. 11.7 is 18, and then what's that middle one? I can't see it.
11, 7, and I think 9.
11.7 and 9, so
The main reason,
26,000 square feet.
the main reason we'd appreciate your guys' passing for today is because we have to order the materials for the pre-engineered
There's
building.
tariffs coming in.
And not, besides the money Mike just brought up, we would really like to get this project done by end, fourth quarter.
2025.
Yeah, and fourth quarter 25 or January of 26. And like I mentioned, we had a big held up with consumers. They had a meter there. It took them like 121 days to remove. And we're really doing our best to get everything done very fast so we could bring a new user to the city of Pontiac.
Well, if I can, I like the design with the exception of the parking, and I'm still scratching my head exactly. If we're talking about a waiver of 33 spaces, doesn't that automatically say you don't have to provide shuttle service?
We just proposed it. So that was one of the way of conquering it. So I'll take whatever you guys say, and I'll take your recommendation.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to understand. I agree with you that probably you won't need all those parking spaces. But if that requirement does kick in and we've provided a waiver, I'm sitting here kind of scratching my head. 2 years down the line, you've got the building up, you got the tenant in, the people are moving in, and then there's this need for the parking space. What happens?
They could still do the shuttle.
We can do the shuttle.
They could do the shuttle, we just can't count it because of our zoning.
Right.
So they should, we hope you would, maintain that new site, that parking lot that you have now.
If we get a tenant that will work with the shuttle, we're going to do the shuttle. We're not going to turn down a lease.
It's overflow parking. You know what I mean? They want to park a truck that they use once a month there. That's their business.
Again, why would you provide a shuttle if we've given a variance, a waiver
I'm
for
doing is putting all
33
options on the
parking
table.
spaces? Is there going to be some mechanism that if the parking space is required, if those parking spaces are required, some conditional type of test, given the type of manufacturing operation they have in there, that, boom, the shuttle's provided or something like that? I'm just saying.
That wouldn't have anything to do with us. It has to do with them keeping their clients happy. So if they find out there's a client that has a bigger use, that's up to them. That's not on our plate.
I disagree.
mean, that's
I
okay. I
guess I
appreciate
see us, if we provide the waiver, then it would not apply, and it would then be it would not be on, if we provide the waiver, we're saying we've gone away from the health and safety aspect of the ordinance, and we've said we've taken that off the table. Now it becomes optional for the owner of the building to provide that parking space. I'm just saying, is there a mechanism where I think it is their intent to do that, but we get it in writing?
And Mr. McGinnis might know, but do we know when that's going to be boulevarded? Like, it's going to be slowed down quite a bit, right?
So I don't know that that would resolve our zoning language about a major thoroughfare, because a boulevard would still probably be considered a major thoroughfare. But yes, that will be a boulevarded two-way Woodward Avenue in front of this building, construction in 2027. So, you know, when the dust settles, probably in 2028, then it would be a little bit more of a pleasant walk. That's what Commissioner Northcross talked about in terms of that Cass Avenue superhighway, the Woodward, you know, the Woodward Loop coming in. That would presumably be not as major of an issue, but I think our ordinance still
Maybe
says
we should
that.
plan a crosswalk across, get it in our plans. Never know.
Mr. McGinnis is right. Even with a crosswalk, the ordinance states you can't cross a thoroughfare. It won't apply. So a waiver.
To satisfy a parking requirement.
To satisfy
still
the
can.
code, yeah, they can still use the parking lot. We just can't count it.
Okay, and so is there going to be some condition put in to say that that remedy that we think right now sounds good will actually be required 2 years from now or whenever they go into production, that's part of the conditions that everybody agrees to for saying we're going to grant the 33 parking spot waiver, which is a significant number of parking spots to waive. But I could see us waiving it because now we have an alternative, we have some alternative processes that go into effect if they're needed, or at least I'm thinking that we're going to have some alternative processes that go into effect. But 2 years down the road, me thinking it versus it actually being in writing are two different things. That's all I'm saying. I mean, I'm willing to sign up to the waiver if there are some alternate things to be done, actions to be taken to ensure that folks aren't having to walk across busy thoroughfares and duck and dodge to get to work. Which my understanding is why we have that item already in our zoning ordinance to protect people and to also keep folks from getting hit by cars and trucks and stuff.
All right, Sue?
Got a couple questions. Well, more than a couple. I'm looking at C9, which is your soil erosion and sediment control plan. And there is an area that says designated stockpile area. If you see the square that says 54, it's right below it. Towards the top in the middle of your plan.
Mark can speak on that. I'm not an engineer.
Thank you.
Name and address, please.
Mark Mahajan from Fairway Engineering, 28525 Beck Road, Wixom, Michigan. I'm the civil engineer for this project. The stockpile area which is shown there, it is for a very temporary purposes. They actually removed the building and demolition already occurred and cleaned up. So there is not much any topsoil or anything coming out of the site. That is just shown for temporary purposes. When they build something before they haul out, that can be piled up, so it can be hauled out.
Okay.
Most likely it will happen that as they excavate or trenches or anything like that, they have to put it in the dump truck right away and haul off.
All right. Unfortunately for you, I work in a facility that is basically the carbon copy of your site.
Okay.
So I know exactly the problems that you're going to have. Regardless whether or not Woodward is reconfigured, you're going to have an issue with your truck traffic. If you look at it right now, you come in one way. There's no way a semi can get into your site and turn around. The only way that he is going to be able to get into your site is to go past your drive and back in. that means he's blocking a significant amount of traffic on Woodward. And if the Woodward Loop is reconfigured, where you have 2 lanes each way, that truck is going to be blocking traffic. And I can tell you that because we block traffic on Hilton every single day. We have trucks parking in the bike lane because they have to wait. We back traffic up. We're right along the railroad tracks at 9 Mile and Hilton. And we have enough employees where we had to purchase the lot across the street and our employees walk across the street or run. So a 33 parking spot waiver is a hard one for me. Our shop guys we have 3 buildings that are put together, and we have a project management wing, an engineering wing, and a shop. We're a steel fabricator. We even have our shop guys parking in the engineering parking lot. So this one's really hard for me. And it really boils down to the parking and the truck traffic. Your landscaping, while you're meeting the requirement, you have a very small area in the front where you're putting your trees. Your semi's going to take that out. There's just no way around it. Now, if your driveway on the, let's say if north is to the left, the driveway on the north, if that was made larger, you could at least get a truck in there to drive south and pull in with the least amount of disruption to Woodward and back in. And then you have your dumpster right up against Woodward, and I understand why you have that, because you have an issue with the truck circulation.
Yes, yes. So the both entrances, the trucks can enter. The dumpster pickup truck can come from the south entrance, go north, pick up the dumpster, and get out of this northerly entrance. So what I try to do, I try to use the existing curb cut what we have on site. And
Curb cuts, right.
yeah. So
Yes.
I can modify that north one to make it wider like the south one. That will make, I agree with you, yeah.
I think you would have to do that in order for, that's why a truck circulation plan is very, and something like this is something that I would want to see.
Okay.
And in the back, same plan. If you go back and it's where your drain is towards the rear, and I understand why you have it open because you have another overhead door there.
Yes.
Is there any way that you can push the parking back a little bit to add additional parking spots? See where you have the X?
Yeah, we're gonna
Yes.
have a 114 grade level, one 12-foot wide by 14 and a half feet tall grade level door for that building.
On the left?
The northern building, yes.
Okay, could you at least, I don't know exactly what kind of wall that you have there.
There is no wall there.
If it's just like bermed up to the railroad tracks.
There's a retaining wall that's already there.
Yeah, there is
Okay.
It's existing.
Could you,
We saved the back wall.
the white wall.
right, okay, right. Could you at least on the south portion of that, push it so you could get like 3 more parking spots there? I mean, it still allows, I mean, you might not get a truck back there, but it's light manufacturing.
Yeah.
Mind if I ask you, how big is the total square footage of the building the one you work at 9 Mile? Is that 70,000, did you say, or?
It's probably similar to the, actually, it's a little bit bigger, I would say.
So I also own a building that my office is in Oak Park. It's the two buildings are 33,000 square feet. We only have one truck well, we have one garbage can for the two buildings. And believe it or not, we most likely, I mean, even like most companies today don't even have the big 53 footers, they're like box trucks. And I use my truck well maybe like 3 times a year because when we get the containers to offload, every other time we just offload from the main, you know, where the loading docks are, where the docks are. I mean, the world today, depending on what kind of tenant it is.
And that's the key. It's
Yeah.
dependent upon your tenant, and unfortunately,
Like even me,
Skids-
my last 5 years in my business, I ship more FedEx ground than I do LTL. This is the future. I mean, people today in most businesses are shipping small packages or FedEx ground more than the big pallets, and even you could do a research search. The LTL and the truckloads in the last 3 years after COVID have diminished in maybe 50% volume.
I can ask you a
And
question.
FedEx and UPS and DHL has gone up 50% or more. So we do have enough.
The
for
nice
small
thing
stores.
that I want you to consider and think about is today with high-lows and the equipment they have, if they do pull in off of the, what is it, the south entrance,
North, this is north.
north entrance, you can make a left, a high-low can come grab the product.
That's what we do
and
in Oak
go
Park
in.
today.
So there is some kind of give and take. I know what you're saying. So if they go in this way, and the north building go out the south, it'll be a loop in and a loop out. That is something to think about. You know what I mean? And
okay.
it is a
I hear ya.
consideration. You know what I mean?
I hear ya.
You know, we're trying to work with what we have. You know what I mean?
I understand. But again, too, you are building a new building in the center, so a certain portion of this is self-created because it is a new building.
Yes.
And
700.
in my eyes, I would rather see you, if it's light manufacturing, great. And because we don't know who your tenant is, I would rather see you get rid of that truck well. Maybe have an overhead door, but not have because your tenant's gonna know his needs, his or her needs. And if you don't have that truck well there, that obviously is the size for a semi backing up, then you're not gonna have an issue pulling out onto Woodward.
Right. So my business, I'm warehouse distribution. I sell apparel. I'm a Midwest distributor. And as I mentioned, we only use our truck well. We have one in Oak Park. I only use it like 3 or 4 times a year when we unload the containers. So it's good to have it there if the person needs it. But don't forget, if they're not going to use it, you can probably fit like 6 cars in that truck well. You know, they just back in or park in, and each, you know, it's a double. So you could park 2, 4, 6 cars there, and those will be probably the employees who are just coming and leaving. You know, coming for the whole 8-hour shift. So that could be considered parking. But I would rather keep it just to effect. I mean, a truck well today is very valuable, and it's very hard to find buildings with this size with a truck well.
Mark, can you put up, or Corey, I'm sorry, can you put up the picture of where it's demolished, right there?
So the truck well is to the left.
I'm looking at the north side. What is your intent with that? I mean, I see the tapered columns and things like that.
Can I speak on that?
Go ahead.
It's gonna get a brick, block facade. It'll have a man door, and it'll be all.
Overhead door on the back.
Was it? And the garage door back.
Great little door.
All the way
Little door to the back over there, so that we're doing some tough pointing, you know what I mean, trying to get the building, enclosed, you know what I mean? So that obviously was not secure, as we found out when we bought the building. That needed to go, because it was a
hazard.
It was a hazard, might have fell on us. So that needed to get addressed, and as we all know, when you get into projects, add an extra 25, 30%.
Right.
So that just happens.
Our intention was to keep, there was a wall there, we were gonna keep it, but then our demolition guy said, listen, I don't
gonna fall on
recommend
somebody.
it, it's gonna fall, and we said, go ahead and take it out, we'll build a new wall.
So
What are the other options for moving your dumpster to a different location?
really,
no option.
There's really
How about
no-
this area here? where
We'll
we-
get
can't.
closer.
That'll be right on Woodward.
So there's this area here where the lieutenant and the fire department called me. There was a.
Landing's just still there. Show it to us, to the right.
Door here.
Yep, that's been
Man door.
removed.
There's a man door here, which we wanted to keep. We're gonna brick up the door here, but we got rid of this loading area. So, I don't know if we use that as an area.
I'd rather not see a dumpster on Woodward, my personal opinion.
We could do that, they would come this way, take off and leave.
Yeah, it gets closer to the
Yeah, it
wood.
gets closer to the
Right
road.
now is maybe like, I don't know,
Well,
15 by 25, and
Yeah.
it's flat ground now. We got rid of the loading dock. The lieutenant was very happy when we got rid of that, because it freed up more space, as you mentioned.
You can circulate there, you
Yeah.
know, a fire truck, ambulance, if you need something.
He was very happy that we took it out. I have a picture if you want to see it. We took it right now.
So that area right there is flat.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what you can show to them.
There was something there, and the lieutenant was very pleased that we took it out. It's a large area. We can make big parking spots. Mark, here it is, that's the area.
Got ya.
Yeah. So we're gonna break up this
yeah,
door.
this one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's gone.
That's gone.
Could that be parking or no?
Could be two side by parallel park to the building too, though.
But there's some spots there we can add. Right or no?
Yep, there's two
Yeah.
parallel.
I kept the dumpster on the north side because there is a green island. I put it so we can hide it.
So
From
the
Woodward.
island will be blocking the dumpsters.
But the side of the dumpster wall can be bricked up to match the building. If we move it to the south side, in the area where it got flattened out now, it's possibility. Then I can get couple more parking spaces there. And I'll put, there will be wall anyway for dumpster enclosure, so I can break it up matching to the building brick.
Along with opening up that drive larger?
Yes, we will.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
All right, those are my questions. Thank you very much. This one isn't open.
So you already you kind of have an idea, like, your tenant's gonna pick, like, no tenant's gonna come in here that's driving, hopefully, that's driving big trucks. They're not gonna rent from you. Is that,
I don't foresee, I mean, especially with, you know, I don't see that happening. I agree with you.
I mean, if I was an industrial user with big trucks, I'm not looking at your space.
We're not set up for that. I mean, we're gonna get research development guy who just has employees, maybe have, you know, some cargo vans or truck. I mean, today's world, if you look at it, unless you're doing like local transportation, you really don't have any trucks.
Right.
And in the proposed, we did get a proposal from somebody who's a research development guy. They have over 75 buildings in America. It's called Elements. We're not for sure, because they're waiting for a finished product, but they would not have, that tenant would not have any trucks.
So Wally's not putting his cars in there?
He will not put his cars in.
That's an option.
I mean, that would be a good use, because
That's
then you're
an
not
So,
dealing with trucks.
another option we thought
That
of,
is an option.
another
Yeah.
option we thought of, if there's a user who would like to rent this to the user, and I can make this indoor car storage, which needs zero parking,
Right.
0 employees, I'm okay with that.
And you're looking at the proprietor right there.
We would manage that ourselves.
Yes.
That would be Park Car Street.
So I guess what we have to look at is what happens if it turns into something else. But if it's something, you know, I guess there's the burden on you, then you can't rent it to certain people.
That's really our problem.
Yeah, no, I get that. I'm a landlord.
Could you try to get back to a microphone?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm okay putting that writing, signing it, that, I would use that, I wouldn't mind using that, because
I'm not gonna commit ourselves to signing anything until we know what they wanna do.
Sure.
So, you know what I mean, before we sign anything, commit to anything, we wanna make sure you guys are happy and
I'm
we're
assuming
happy.
you don't want a vacant building, so
Yeah, so-
if you,
And Wally does turn down about 30 to 40 cars so our partner in Pike Street.
yeah, he's right near where you live, right? So I don't know if you know,
So he does turn down 30 to 40 cars a season. Ferrari wanted to put 24 cars in, and his son didn't want to maneuver, so I have no problem parking cars in that one.
I don't,
As a frame of reference for the other commissioners, the third partner, Mr. Schwartz, has an existing operation in Pontiac that does vehicle storage.
right across the street, and there's almost no parking concern.
No parking, he has no parking.
And he loves you guys, just so you know for the record.
Yeah, he's a character.
He's a character. Thank God he's not here.
Right.
Thank God he's in South Beach.
I mean, I guess that would be my, they're not really concerns. I mean, look, you make the front of it beautiful. It's going to be a huge improvement on what's been there for a long time.
It took us a lot of.
So, a lot of background story. Wally pushed this site on us.
Right.
When he took me there, I said, "Are you on drugs?" Look, straight up. I'm not gonna lie. So there's raccoons coming out of this building. Crazy? He goes, I got a vision. You're gonna own a property on Woodward, Mike and Chris. Just listen, follow my lead, son.
That's awesome.
And then we ended up buying it.
So, but I guess the main point is you're probably you're going to limit your tenants. I mean, meaning not because you want to, but nobody with a trucking company is going to want to come in there.
Let's be real. I mean,
So-
they're going to know themselves.
That would be my only comments. I mean, doing car storage, we can't tell you to do that, but if you did that, then you don't have your same parking concerns.
Yeah, we do.
To confirm that, would C3 corridor commercial, the current zoning for the property, would that allow for indoor vehicle storage? Or would that require a special exception, or?
Let me double check, but I believe so.
Okay.
I think we looked into it last
The
time we met.
ordinance
Yeah.
is so broad for this location, was like, we could have put a auto parts store there, we could have done a lot, it was a lot of open. And we feel what we're doing now is the best use for the city, I mean.
So to quickly answer your question, it would be permitted by right in C3.
Okay, so by right, it's permitted, and that obviously would not have a major impact in terms of customer or even employee parking. But the city recognizes, this planning commission recognizes it's a unique site. You're sandwiched between a major thoroughfare, you're sandwiched between a rail crossing, and that presents some unique challenges that, the Oliver Company and the Bottling Works, they worked with, it worked for them, but that we recognize that it's going to take a unique configuration to make it work because of that sandwiching. And this isn't the only parcel that we've seen that. We've seen it on the opposite of the other side in other thoroughfares as well. The way in which rail lines have sliced up our city adds to some unique land use implications.
Mr. Tom Hunt, the old owner of the Coke bottling, actually came and visited us. The guy from the Oliver Company came and tried saving his sign. We couldn't, it was too late. I mean, a lot of people are excited about this project. I mean, it's sad 16 years, this sitting there. When Oakland County Assessors came out, we're very excited, and I know you guys are excited as well.
Good. Thank you. I don't have any other questions.
Did you happen to save the limestone?
Could not say,
Listen, with closing down Woodward for 24 hours,
For 24 hours, or we had MDOT.
I needed them to move because I had a lot of angry people.
Yeah.
They don't want it closed down for
Well,
24
then you know
hours.
what'll happen if you get a
Oh,
semi
no, we
in there.
had it down to not even a lane. We had it like a stop and go.
We got it done in 4 hours.
That building was about to fall on, no, you don't want to know. It's safe. Everybody's good.
All right.
You can do it.
You think I'm the easy one on this commission.
No, I know. Trust me. I have a wife at home.
I'm not.
My question, though, is, because Commissioner Northcross asked earlier, 3-1 was sufficient for recommendation. This is an approval. Does this require a full 4 votes? I mean, we're kind of hamstrung by the fact that we're a skeleton crew today.
So what, are you asking what it'll take
Like
to
how many
approve?
votes gets the?
3.
Oh, okay. I mean, we still might not get it. I just was curious what the math is.
Yeah, like I said, I'm still, that 33 parking space waiver without, any alternative plans being in front of me right now, I don't know how to handle that. Having worked in a number of manufacturing and other areas where I've had to duck and dodge and run, and I said, no, man, I can't do that to anybody else.
To the attorney, are we able to add that as a sixth condition?
You would be, yes. A motion by this council would allow that to be added as an additional motion.
Yeah, and realize, that's just me.
If needed.
Just where I am. I mean, you
I
guys
mean,
are
we're gonna
free
be
to
with
go
the same, we're gonna have the
whichever
same discussion about it, so whatever we come up with, again, we've gotta be able to make it work, and we've gotta be able to suffice you guys and make you guys happy. So either way, it's gonna come up, we gotta deal with it. So hopefully, I don't know how you can deal with it without getting a variance, or,
As Mr. Shepherd said, I mean, the chances are we're not gonna get that type of tenant because they're gonna see the size and say no.
it might be a moot point. I don't know.
Like I said, when there was conditions to that, I brought up many examples. My example, my building is 33,000 square feet in Oak Park. I only have 11 employees. I mean, it's just.
Well, let me ask it this way. The formula that gave us the needed 33 spaces, what is that contingent upon? I didn't think to go back through the ordinance. That's not square footage, is it?
But that, I think is,
So-
that's C3 zoning.
Hold on.
So we're doing,
I wanna see that calculation too.
Give me 1
because I don't
minute.
know how they calculate it myself, so.
While they're looking at this, there is a building to the south that you don't own, correct?
No, that's, we're not even allowed to get equipment on that building. We were kicked off, just so you know.
Okay,
He said, no equipment on my building.
so
now the guy didn't let Mike use the bathroom.
I was like, okay,
you don't own that building.
I do not.
Do you happen to know who owns the
Oh.
parcel on the other side that's on the radius of that?
Yes, we know.
South or north he's talking about?
You talking about the other building, the red
Cass
one?
or Woodward?
Next door to us,
Woodward.
on the north side or the south side?
South side.
South side.
The south
see
side,
where
we
you're
don't
going.
know who owns that.
We know who owns the building.
The north of us is on Cass, his address is Cass.
Not
Oh, that's
not the building, just the lot, correct?
The grass
The
lot,
grass
yeah,
lot.
on the
There's a
very,
grass lot with a little garage on it, right?
There's a little shed there.
on the, yeah, but on the south side of that,
Yes,
there's that
yes.
lot.
So which one are we looking
We're
at?
talking about this. So this and this is owned by, this and this is owned by the real, and this is owned by a person who has a little shed here, and I've never seen him once.
Yeah, he told us we can't use his property.
But that was the guy who really is. So I think we didn't see him. Our guy was trying to clean that building up, saw him, and he didn't.
We're doing some tuck pointing there, so.
Start pointing on the building, and he didn't allow him to, you said, please take your equipment out, and we're gonna use ladders.
And I think that Commissioner Sinclair, the land that runs parallel to Woodward southbound at the bottom there, I think that's owned by the Michigan Department of Transportation.
Yes. Yeah, there's Michigan Department of Transportation, he's right.
And
It's-
if I may, I think the point is can you get parking on those spaces if you need it?
Yeah, exactly.
So
In other words, instead of having to go across the street, you could park
we can
a
ask
building away.
Wally to speak with, if he'll let us have some parking there.
Okay, so we have the gentleman.
I don't know.
north. This gentleman here, Cass Avenue. This guy owns this building, this building, and this building. Here is his man cave. He uses this as like a getaway. He's 84, his name is Mr. Lee, he's 84 years old. In this building, he parks his own private collection of cars. And he only, I've been there since June, like I mentioned, and he has one Audi that he parks here. So we have to.
I mean, we can't, we can't,
A 10-year lease deal or something.
we can't promise that that'll happen because you don't know. You know what I mean?
But
You might-
but that would solve a problem if you found a bigger user that
Yeah.
needed more
Yeah, I
parking,
mean-
correct?
He uses one, I've seen one car there in the last 10 months. He has an Audi. He comes there, you know, he hangs out as an older gentleman, and he's never seen more than one car there.
But I think the concern from some of the board is that how do we put teeth in that? Like, how do we get to a situation? Look, I'm a landlord, so I know that as a landlord, you're going to figure out what's going to work for your tenants. You have to, or you're not going to have tenants. But to make everybody feel comfortable, is there something we can, to add some teeth to it so it's on the same side of the road so you have parking?
Real quick, can I jump in and answer Mr. Northcross's question? So the requirement is based off square footage. Every 550 square foot of industrial requires a parking space, and every 300 square feet of office requires a parking space.
I think that right there should answer your question.
So 550
Yeah,
feet,
if you're 26,000 square feet,
so we need.
you're not going to have per capita on that, an employee for every 500 square feet.
Right.
Especially if it's light industrial.
Especially in today's world.
I know your situation, and I respect that, so I understand you have a unique situation. But let's say they have 22,000 square feet of like whatever they're going to use it for. They might only have 7 employees. This might be a complete moot point. They might have 12 employees. Heck, let's call it 18. I don't think you're going to get 33 cars there that are at one time. Today's world, especially with, I hate to say it, with the new laws and everything that's going in place, as a business owner myself, with TPO, everything we're dealing with, we're looking at, we need to shrink we need to be more profitable. It's tough.
I
So people are
understand.
getting smarter.
I do think, I mean, one parking spot for every 550 square feet for industrial, regardless of light or heavy or whatever.
Just a
industrial.
general requirement.
I mean, that does seem antiquated, like we're thinking about, when it's a GM plant that isn't automated, I just want to keep, even if we don't resolve that question tonight.
I have an idea for Planning Commission, but I want to bounce this off the attorney just to make sure. Is this possible that this approval could strike the waiver but amend this to actually say that the applicant should get a future waiver from Planning Commission when there's a known user beyond the amount of parking spaces that are there? That gives two things. That gives Planning Commission the ability to know what's coming in, a little bit more information. It gives the applicant more time if off-site parking is able to be secured. Are you comfortable, Mr. Castro, with that, if a motion is made by Planning Commission on that condition? It's unusual, but it might be a good solution at the moment.
Just say it one more time, just so I'm clear about, so a waiver at the future date when the user goes in?
So condition 5 would be struck as written and reworded to say that a waiver is not provided by Planning Commission with this approval. However, the applicant or property owner must secure proper parking or a waiver from Planning Commission if the required spaces is beyond the amount provided on site with the future user or for each future business seeking zoning. So what would happen is normally a future user with the site plan approval, they'll make the changes. They'll just go to planning and get a REOC application. They're going to get a white box to get this finalized by the building department, but they'll just get a REOC application. But there would be one added step that if the first user comes in and they only need 12 spaces, they get that approval, they go forward. But once it triggers beyond the available spaces that are provided here, that they would either need to provide a way for off-site parking, there'd be a legal agreement, or they would come back to Planning Commission for a waiver at that time.
Yes, that would be an acceptable amendment to strike 5 as written in. If we can condense that into something that is more succinct, then absolutely, I would be comfortable with that.
Are the applicants comfortable with
So
it?
I did my math. You're asking for 47 parking spots. That's next to impossible. So either way, we have to come up with something.
Also, we can make that part of the CFO when the new tenant applies, they need the parking, right?
I know, but we're never going to get 47 parking spots here. Never.
If I may, it would seem that our formula, and I agree,
I think
is
it's
probably antiquated.
Yep.
I like looking at different formulas or counts. I'm not sure where in the probably building occupancy approval we would do a count of the number of employees. But if there's somewhere in that chain between now and the building opening up that an actual count of the employees or a projection, some formula for saying this is how many spaces occurs dependent upon the business that would be occupying that space, I could say yes. And then by the same token, that would mean, though, that the types of businesses that might go in there may be limited in terms of the total realm and a C3 type of thing. But that, I mean, I could see that working out where we still provide the protections I think that we would want our citizens to have, because we're thinking that hopefully a lot of our citizens will be the people working in this facility.
Absolutely. I have a question.
And at the same time allow you to get the full, maximize your utility and the return on your
And if
investment.
I can just say one thing too, if this was
But
across,
I'm not sure what that.
if this was across Woodward, we would have no parking requirements like this.
You mean if it were on
Meaning if it was in the
C2
I mean, you wouldn't put an industrial building in the downtown, but we wouldn't have, because we're focusing on density and people are used to walking. So, you know, I think it's antiquated. It's like what you said earlier. I mean, I don't think that we need to push to have big parking lots all over the city. Like, I don't know the benefit to the community, and just hear me out on that idea. Like, I don't know the benefit to the community to have big open parking lots. Like, we're kind of at a stage in this world where we're trying to shrink down the amount of cement that's just there because we people require it. They're at a disadvantage if they bring in a tenant that has more than 30-some spots. They're going to have an angry tenant, and the tenant's going to leave. So I guess I just make that point because, if that makes sense with what we're talking about, but forcing a big parking lot on people doesn't always make sense in all situations. I appreciate your concern.
I'm agreeing. I'm just saying that to put a number in place that we have today, I'm thinking, yeah, that is a bit extreme. However, on the other end, to not provide ample parking, and knowing that we're into the midst of doing a lot of development and other things there, I think would be a disservice, particularly to probably the employees and maybe to customers if there's a need for customers to have to visit that location.
So,
But I think there could be a happy medium depending upon what the business actually does, and let the formula that would consider the business, make some projections from there, drive the actual parking numbers as opposed to just square footage right now, which is kind of coarse.
So to speak on what he had said about a sea of asphalt, I own a strip mall in Livingston County, and the planning commission there held my feet to the fire to lower the amount of asphalt, to lower the amount of parking. Then, in turn, when they did that, and I had some tenants come in, they said, you don't meet the requirements of the parking. So I had to go back to the minutes and bring up that the planning commission made me reduce it, and they had to follow through and allow me to put that tenant use there because they're the ones that made me reduce the amount of parking. I did, have a few parking spots I was able to add and mark up, but it was their mistake for asking me to reduce it, which I did. Then they tried to stop me from putting a tenant in there, and then they said, no, you know what? We did ask you that, and the old commission, we don't know what to say. I don't want to be in that position. I've been down that road. I built that in 2007, and your tenants change.
Yes.
You've got Tropical Smoothie, you've got Jimmy John's, you've got other tenants. So you're in a situation where you're kind of handcuffed. There's no right, there's no wrong. You guys aren't wrong. You're right. But at the same time, we're not wrong. It's a tough situation, but you have to work through it and mitigate through it. And I would love for you guys to consider that because she's not wrong. She's telling you the truth. But we're not wrong. I'm saying, of course you are. You know what I mean?
But as a landlord, you have to choose your tenants based on their users. I have a building where, I have a small venue. I can't put another venue in there.
Nope.
Because on a Saturday, they're taking up all the parking. So it's your
you
job
answered that.
to
I own a
make
bar,
sure.
and I made it really small. It's a very successful bar, but I choose not to expand it because I don't have the parking.
Right.
So I choose what I want to do as a landlord, and I make the right decisions for the center and my other tenants. Exactly what you said. You pick and choose. So we do have experience doing that. I know you heard this before.
So here would
trust
be-
in the process and believe in us.
Here would be the flip side of that conversation. Let's say you sell the property tomorrow, or after you get all your approvals done, and I'm just bringing up the concerns that everybody would have, and then somebody tries to bring in some extreme use and say, well, there's not enough parking, and the city, come back to us. So that's the flip side.
There's always a flip side.
But
You know
I
what mean?
understand it. Nobody's gonna. But as a
there's-
buyer, I'm not gonna buy your property based on not being able to figure out parking either.
Yeah,
So I'm guessing you're good value guys, and you're going to figure out how to make this work.
We plan on holding this, we've been holding, we have this business holding.
Wally's
trying to
gonna live-
build
Wally's gonna
generational
live to
wealth for our
150,
kids,
so he's
guys.
not going to let you. So.
We're just trying to build a future for our kids and ourselves and make this successful. You know what I mean? And
It's a challenge, but
there's challenges.
And
If it was easy, everybody'd be doing it.
right. Okay, go ahead.
So to the applicant, the planning manager has proposed a potential alternative language saying planning commission is not providing a waiver for parking spaces with this site plan approval, the property owner will be required to provide the required parking or a parking waiver from Planning Commission before a new business is approved where the parking requirements would exceed the built parking spaces on the site. Is that something you're comfortable with?
No, I'm not comfortable with it because I don't know what I'm going to be held to.
I have a question for that.
So the question is, you're asking me to come back to you guys, and I'm going to be held accountable to make sure that you guys tell me, oh, nope, you need 40, you got 33, sorry. So how can I say yeah to that? I mean, without my attorney present, your attorney's present, but I don't know how that language moves me forward. I can't agree to that because moving forward on that language would put me at a crossroad, you know what I mean? And I think as a landlord, you guys would all agree, I just went through the same situation. It cost me money, and it cost me tenants, and I came back, I ended up getting what I needed, but I fought tooth and nail and had to go back to the minutes, had to prove my case, bring my attorney in, cost me money, guys. I don't want to go down that road again.
So
I'd rather not.
Would this be at, say, would you find a tenant when they apply for the CFO with you guys? Occupancy, that's when that's going to come up?
So, you know, if you have.
And we discussed it with you before when we met with you. We said, we have challenges, we know that. I wish it was more brought up. Maybe we would have pivoted a different way and not spent this kind of money with our engineering and everything. I feel like that language is going to hurt us.
So I think part of it, what I'm hearing from this commission is just the unknown, and you've even expressed this, different users may have different parking requirements. And I think that you likely are going to be able to get one user in here, probably is not going to need a parking waiver, can come in. But at some point that, you know, the parking requirements from our code, you know, from maybe the second user or the third user exceed what's here, that's when it is a requirement of the property owner to either ensure that there's proper off-site parking or to ask for a waiver. Now, the waiver, you know, more often is going to be helpful for you if it's a user that does not have a lot of parking needs. It just depends on what that business is. It is, I do understand the risk that you've expressed. I mean, you know, from that perspective, but the alternative is try to redesign the site to find more parking on it. You know, I know that's not an easy ask.
So can I clarify, when you're saying user one, user two, are you saying like a tenant using a portion of the site?
Because
Okay.
there's essentially 3 buildings here, and while in a perfect world, you can correct me, there could be one user for this entire building. You know, what they've expressed to us previously is there could be multiple users. Is that correct?
Possibly could be 2.
2, okay.
Possibly.
Okay.
But the proposal we had now is for 1, too.
Yep.
What happens for vehicle storage, indoor vehicle storage? Is there unique parking requirements
Yes.
for that type of facility?
Yep, so that would be a change of use. So that would mean that that condition would no longer apply. Well, sorry, I'll let Mark
And
speak.
let me just explain, that is one space per 2,000 square feet of floor area plus one space of 350 square feet of office area. So that is slightly different than what Corey had described about 5-10 minutes ago. So there's a much lower requirement
so
for
I'm gonna
wholesale
ask
storage and
a scenario.
distribution.
So they might not need a waiver if it's wholesale storage.
So I'm going to ask a scenario they just brought up. We use the one building for car storage, and the other 2 buildings now are used for light manufacturing.
Do we meet the requirements?
Do we meet the requirements? This is an honest, valid question. I need to know this, so in my head, I know what I'm getting myself into, because I feel like legalities here are going to get me in trouble.
What's the square footage of the building that potentially?
There's 11,000 square foot is the
It's the northern building.
northern building.
9,000.
9,000.
It'd be car storage.
And
That's
then now you
9,000
have
square foot.
16,000
Building A?
on the rest.
Building A?
Is that 16? Yeah. Is it 16? What is it?
Building A is 7,000.
7,000?
No, A is 9,000.
Yep. So this building to the
The north. would
North
be
side.
car storage,
yes.
and the other ones would be 18,000.
You see the challenge I'm asking, the question I'm asking.
18,000 square feet, you said,
Yeah,
how much,
18,000.
how much is that added up?
So that would be
For every 500, so we would need 36 spots?
Still don't meet your requirement, Chris.
Also, how much office area?
32. You meet it by
Not
one.
much office.
1,500 square feet.
1,500.
Or it could be 1,000. We don't know. We just put a generic office. It could be 600 square feet. We don't know. We just put a generic white box as a landlord. What you do is you just put a shell in there, a warm shell, and then you can design,
That doesn't require.
if you want 2 offices at 400 square feet, do you want 2 offices at 500 square feet?
There are different requirements between all 3 of those, and the office space has actually a different parking requirement. And so there's a lot of
That's
variable
what I'm trying to
factors.
say. I think with that language, it's, and your attorney is present, if I come in with different calculations, I've got to know ahead of time where I'm going down this road. If we're just putting a language in there and we don't know the legalities of it, I can't say it's okay. You know what I mean? Because you just threw it in there, but we don't know what the mixed use is.
We're trying to work with you
Yeah.
on your timeline.
Yeah.
We could always postpone this a month, but we understand that that's painful. So we're trying to work
Yeah.
through it.
Very, very painful.
How many parking spots are on this site plan preliminary?
27, and if we add a couple more next to the area I mentioned in the picture.
Could be 29.
29.
Okay. It's 27 or 29 in that ballpark of current parking spaces. Were you doing some calculator math there, Manager Yandrick, in terms of what their buildings B and C would require approximately?
Yes, so this does not count office space. An office
Yes.
space has different parking requirements.
Yes.
Just based on those 2 other, wholesale storage and distribution and light manufacturing, it would be, the parking requirement is 34. The one thing about office space is that requires 1 space for every 300 square feet. So that is the most, that requires the most parking spaces because that's where you have employees.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
sometimes customers and things like that.
Then possibly a solution is that we do grant a waiver, but we grant a waiver of 10 parking spaces or something that's more minimal, which would involve vehicular storage for building A. That resolves a big component of the calculation. Should you want to pursue that, it's your business. But it means that we're recognizing that the requirements that we have are antiquated. It shows that we're willing to accommodate the nuance of the very unique sandwich space here between the Woodward Loop and the rail line. I just don't know how other commissioners feel about that. So rather than granting full 33 parking spaces, we'd be granting a waiver of something a lower level. And then should there be, like if you wanted to use building A for something else, it would have to come back to us for a parking waiver.
So
So we get rid of number 6 and
So I have a question.
change 5 to 10.
I had a tenant come and say, we only use 6 parking spots. They say my use is 12. Would a letter from the tenant suffice saying we don't have 30 employees? Would that work? And that's the question I need to know.
It's
Would
a
that-
valid question,
It's
I
a
don't
valid
know.
question. I need that. Do you want to repeat it or do you want me to repeat it?
You can repeat it.
Okay, thank you. So I had a situation, Supercuts, I'll give you the tenant. They only had 4 chairs in there. It was 1,100 square feet. Most people they're going to have in there, they have 2 barbers, 2 stylists, 4 chairs. So they only need 6 people. So they said at most they'll have 6 cars in there, but the use was permitted for 12 parking spots because they had 2, whatever. I don't know how they came up. So Supercuts wrote a letter to the planning commission, to submit it to the city of Howell, and they reviewed it and got a waiver saying, you're right, they only use 6 people because they only got 4 chairs in there. The most cars they could have at one time would be 6. They had it down for 12. Is that a situation that I would be able to use? I don't know. I need you to ask you guys. I was able to get that waived. Will I be in the same position here today? Or when I come forward in a year, 6 months, 10 months?
So if I'm following, if a user comes who is not light manufacturing,
Well, no, it would be some,
It'd
well,
be light manufacturing, but it would not be your 44 use. It would be 20. Would a letter suffice that they're not going to need that many spaces?
oh, that's up to the commission.
See, that's-
In
yeah.
terms of what standard the commission uses in order to grant a waiver, the ordinance provides no direction. There's no standards. It's up to the commission what facts they find relevant that will allow them to grant that waiver. If this was the ZBA, we have clear standards, but
In
it's
other
up
words,
to the
every
commission.
tenant, they would have to come back.
So in the future, sorry, what's the question?
So my question, I guess, was,
Every time we get a new tenant, we have to come
every
back.
time he gets a new tenant, does he have to come back to us to make a decision on that?
In what scenario?
Like, let's say his user, he's got a user that has a smaller parking need or something like that, any scenario.
Well, I think what Corey's asking is if we did 6.
Right. Are we doing 6? Are we doing 5?
In
What
that
are we talking about?
scenario.
Number 6?
Yeah.
What future is this question existing
And
in?
if I'm understanding things right, Michael, tell me if I'm wrong, is get rid of 6 and change the waiver to a smaller number.
But that would still create a problem because so if you only granted a waiver of 10 spaces, they would still be deficient 23 and we couldn't approve. It would not meet the objective, necessary requirements of the site plan, you could not approve.
And Corey, the only add-on to that is I 100% agree with Corey, but I don't know if Commissioner McGinnis was stating, we're giving you a waiver of 10, but anything you're coming in with a requirement more than either 37 or 39, which is 10 more spaces than you're either providing or about to provide, you would need to either, and this where 6 comes into play, you would either find required parking according to our code, which could be off-site, or a parking waiver from Planning Commission. So I think with McGinnis's suggestion, I think it would just have to be crafted in such a way that's not a full waiver, but at some point would trigger having to come back to Planning Commission.
And that would give them time to negotiate with the neighbors and come up with more parking, in theory, right?
Should they need it.
Should they need it.
All market
Why not just
requires
postpone
for
it?
most industrial real estate, the first thing is height ceilings, parking spots.
Again, they have all
So so if I'm a company looking to lease and I need 60 parking spots, and I only put 33 on the flyer, most likely they're not gonna call.
You're not getting those people.
You're not getting those people anyway. I really think, you brought it up earlier, Mr. Shepherd, that people realize what they're coming to see, once they view it, most people view like 3 times before they sign a lease. Then they come the first time, they're interested, they might come back, they might not come back. They're viewing like 10 buildings in the area. Our good luck, our actually positive is, there isn't that much right now available, so I'm pretty sure we're gonna get a tenant pretty fast. So like I said, the first thing is height ceilings, parking spaces. As you mentioned, if they have 60 employees, they're not coming to see our building, because we only have 33 available or whatever.
Well, then that'll
the number
push
is.
you to buy bigger, another lot that's got extra spots. I mean, I'm just saying if you.
The good news is we do have
If you can't
options
rent
here.
that
We could lease from the guy from the north of us on Cass, and the guy from the south, like I said, I've never seen him, I've been there a lot, and it's grass now, and I don't know what the guy uses it for. I think he just bought it, and I don't even know if he's up to date on his taxes or not, but there could be, I'm pretty sure.
But that's a burden on you. I mean, if you've got a big
No, we
user
would-
that
we
comes
would
in, you're
put
gonna
up-
have to satisfy that need somehow.
We would acquire
But that's
the
in your
lot.
benefit, right?
If we're gonna get extra money for the lease, we would acquire the lot, trust me.
That's my point.
Yes.
Mark, question. So in our conditions, if we approve, how do we specify that if we are granting a waiver of a certain amount, how do we say that this does not include the parking requirements for Building A? Is that where we're at?
Well, we're only there, I think, if they choose to use a different use. Because right now, if they go with vehicle storage, you were saying, Corey, that's a different use for Building A and therefore has different parking requirements, right?
And again, we don't know if we're doing that.
Right.
That would require a whole separate application.
And we don't wanna tell you that we're doing it, we're not doing it.
Yeah.
We're not really, our goal here is to lease the whole site to one user.
Question. I was listening to your supercuts
Yes,
example.
yes. It worked well.
Yeah,
I'd really love for you to consider that.
It spurred the thought of
Yes.
one, striking number 5, not granting any waiver at this time, and looking at, once you figure out what you're going to do, then come for a waiver for the parking spaces
I
in the
agree with you.
future.
I think that would be the right way for us to have a better understanding than,
At this
and then
point
I
in
can come
time,
forward and say, look, they got 15
that would
employees.
say, at this point in time, that would say you would, well, see, how can we approve it, though? Because at this point in time, we would still be requiring the 33 spaces. Oh, okay, that doesn't
Yeah.
work.
Could it be a
That doesn't work.
conditional temporary waiver of parking spaces that expires in 12 months?
Can it be
Yeah, 'cause
a-
I'd like to get the business here, but at the same time,
I'm going to
Can
refer
it-
to council and say, there's got to be some verbiage we could have where we can submit the amount of cars, we'll have the 30, we'll put in the parking, as we have to, and I'm very confident that I don't think 27 people are working in this building.
Can we, sorry, I didn't mean
Go
to
ahead. No, you have the
start talking as you,
Go ahead, you have the floor. I do that a lot, so I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Is there a way that we can say something like this site plan is, approval is conditional upon future parking requirements? Can we do it as conditional approval so he can at least get his permits to get going? And
What would the condition be? Provide me clarity.
And it sounds like that's essentially condition 6. You know, that really is a conditional thing that says we're not providing a waiver, but at some point, the property owner, if they're going to exceed, which means a user could go in there if they don't exceed the requirements and not have to come back to planning commission. That really is what 6 is.
But
Can we
now that
put
I'm
in the
looking at this,
can we
that
put in
creates
her
the problem that
verbiage?
they have to meet the 60 space requirement in order to approve tonight. And so if we are, I don't think 6 is going to work because they have to either get a variance, a waiver, or reconfigure the site. That's the only way to get past this hurdle. Because they have to meet all 60 spaces, one way or another.
And the ordinance that we have about not counting across the thoroughfare, that's an ordinance. That can't be sort of
Right.
overridden by a planning commission.
Correct. Now, the ZBA could grant a waiver from the requirement from that standard saying, that if it's across the thoroughfare, it does not count. The ZBA could grant a waiver from that. But I do want to emphasize to the board, they have the correct number of parking spaces. The only issue is the existence of Woodward Avenue. If this were any other street, it wouldn't be a problem.
I mean, I recognize that other commissioners don't. I am open to a substantial parking waiver because I think our requirements are very excessive. And that there still is parking, it's just the technicality, it can't be counted. But I respect that if commissioners feel otherwise.
In other words, they can still use that lot to satisfy any overflow. It's just not us saying that they're satisfying.
We can't use it to
We can't use it
satisfy
that need.
the
But
formula.
They can use it for whatever they want because they own the lot. They're not looking at buying this lot.
Yeah, basically the standard says the city can't look at it to meet their requirements, but they can use it.
then basically that lies on whoever he leases the building to. If they choose to use that because they need it, then they would have to go back to his point of shuttling them,
And that's
Unless he
between
went-
the developer and his tenants.
unless they went before ZBA and ZBA gave them a variance to use the parking lot across the street without a shuttle.
Right.
Okay, so,
Well, wait, no, sorry, I think I got lost. So the shuttle is not required by the ordinance?
Well,
That's just
I'm
offered by.
sorry.
That's
Without-
that's their own thing.
Okay, then I think
Yeah.
I answered right.
okay.
I think I'm liking it. Let me do a little active listening here. I'm hearing that if we grant the waiver for 33 parking spaces, there's some mechanism we have in the final approval of the certificate of occupancy that's already there that says that given the parking spaces they have, that will be sufficient for the tenant to occupy that building. However, if they go above that, well, I guess we would have to, okay, as I say that, I'm just thinking we have to actually, maybe we need to approach it from another matter. Rather than a waiver, we actually specify the maximum number of parking spaces they have, and, oh, no, that doesn't work out either.
Can we add as a condition that if said parking is required or needed by tenant, that they go to ZBA for a variance?
No, because that won't address the issue of tonight. which is that without providing 60 qualifying spaces, we can't move to the next level.
I have a suggestion. We can't put a tenant in that has more than 32 parking spots. Bottom line, it's just, this is what we have. This is what we can offer you. Take it or leave it. I'm the landlord. I make, Chris, so you know, Chris finds the tenants and I negotiate the deals. And I make sure that we are conforming. And what I have is what you can get. And as a landlord, as you know, we can't make magic. You know what I mean? It's open and obvious. Here's what I have to offer you. Open and obvious.
Well, your magic you're going to make is not on anything to do with our board.
Yeah.
Meaning.
No, I'm saying for
meaning-
the parking,
No, I
parking.
understand.
yeah.
No, but I'm
Yeah.
saying for parking, like if you need an
Yeah.
extra 20 spots because you found an extra tenant, then you're going to figure that out. Meaning you're going to shuttle them across the street. It
Yeah.
should have nothing to do with us.
Yeah. You know what I mean? So that what you see is what I'm providing is all I can give you.
Why do we care?
And Corey, is it accurate what you said earlier that once, as a condition no matter what, the off-site parking has to be removed from this site plan? And if the waiver for 33 spaces is granted, and say the tenant needs more than the 27 available, there's nothing really prohibiting them as the landlords from allowing the tenant to park in their lot that is across the street that is just not part of tonight's site plan?
Correct.
Correct.
So they still can't use it. The waiver is just saying, as it exists, we have 27, that's all we got, I'm sorry. However, we do have a,
can
you know,
offer
an
you
off-site lot.
I can
that,
offer you
again,
7
when it's
more.
not part of the site plan anymore,
Right.
the workers can walk across the street because it's not part of a site plan.
Yeah.
This one, or they can be shuttled or however you want to do it.
Yep.
So I think potentially the 33 waiver still might be the route because again, they're just allowing them.
Microphone, please.
It was, it cut off.
Okay. Then they're just allowing them to park in a lot that they own across the street, but it's just not a part of this site plan approval for tonight.
Yes. I think maybe another way the board could think of it is in the past when these parking waivers have come forward, the applicant has provided proof that they won't need those spaces and you've granted. In this case, they're coming to you and saying, we have the spaces, we're willing to use them, the zoning ordinance just won't allow us to count it, but we have them, would you please give us a waiver? That's what they're asking.
That's what it sounds like, okay. So just want to make sure that I was understanding what you were saying. And again, they have it, but they just can't count it for this, but that
Yes.
off-site has to be removed anyway because you can't have them walking across the street. But when it's not part of the site plan, then the employees, if they wanted to, could cross the street anyway.
Yes,
or
their
get
parking lot.
Or get shuttled if they choose to do that.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's my concern is that we have people walking across a busy street, and that's not right. That's not right. That's not right.
Do you want to make it?
I make a motion to approve the site plan based on the following 7 conditions. 1, the site plans will be revised to include all the informational items identified in the staff report. The off-street parking lot is prohibited across a thoroughfare per the zoning ordinance and must be removed from the site plans and not part of this application. 3, the front facade must be revised before issuance of the final site plan to comply with the zoning ordinance requirements for building materials. At least 60% of the facade, not counting windows and doors, must be composed of primary building materials. No more than 10% may be composed of accent materials, and there must be at least 40% transparency. 4, at least 1 bike lane must be provided for every 20 parking spaces.
Bike space, you said bike lane.
Let me say that again. Number 4, at least 1 bike space must be provided for every 20 parking spaces. 5, Planning Commission grants a waiver of 33 parking spaces. 6, a dumpster enclosure that matches the brick of Building A is provided. 7, enlarge the north entrance.
Support.
Thank you.
Can you specify north entrance in terms of off of Woodward, like the
The-
curb cut or? Curb cut.
The north curb cut entrance on Woodward Avenue.
I'm so sorry. Could you repeat all of 7 for me?
All 7?
Starting with
Not,
7.
no. Just number 7, but state the whole thing.
Enlarge curb cut at the north entrance on Woodward Avenue.
Now, all
Oh, man.
No.
And I think Commissioner Shepherd seconded.
That's the support, yeah.
Discussion?
Oh, yeah.
Is it appropriate? Again, active listening. Does this then prohibit any parking spaces that are located across, that are located on what would be the east side of Woodward for this facility?
No.
Those are not included in
Not-
It's not included in tonight's site plan.
Does this prohibit the owners here from advertising parking spaces, additional parking spaces? Or, I'm just saying, what do we have in here to say they
Ensure that they don't
continue
use
to
it?
go through and they develop that parking space on the east side of Woodward, where they were originally proposing there being parking spaces, and that being offered in the future as parking? That maybe not parking for this building, but they said, well, there's a lot over there that if you want to use it, you can walk to it.
If I can answer what I think the answer is, I think that takes it out of all of this. They can use it for whatever they want. What we hope is that we're softening down the traffic flow in that area. It's not part of what we're doing tonight, but the hope is that they're not walking across 5 lanes of traffic, if they ever need it. Right. It's zero to do with.
It's a separate tax bill, too. I want to make that clear for the record.
Yeah.
It is not tied to this parcel. It's a separate tax bill.
So I wasn't
do pay
trying to.
tax- Yeah, I do
I'm
pay
not trying to lump
taxes on
it
it.
on there, because that has nothing to do with what we're talking about tonight. It's
Okay.
just, I think what his concern is, if there's people walking across the street, like right now, we know why Woodward has to be boulevarded, because it's dangerous and scary, and if somebody's walking across the street and for whatever reasons, but that's not part of the thing for tonight. But to answer what I think is going to happen is, we kind of know what's going to happen is it's going to slow that traffic down. There's going to be grass in the middle. There's going to be walkways. It should slow down, that traffic, but it doesn't work for what we're trying to do tonight. So.
Let me ask it this way. The parking lot that's on the east side of Woodward, is that removed from the site plans? Okay,
Yes.
so 33 feet. So if that is developed as a parking lot, then that would be a separate thing. I think that's downtown.
Yep, that's C2.
Does that allow parking lots?
I believe so. We have a few downtown.
We have just recently adopted ordinances to add more requirements and enforcement of large parking lots. That is paid, oh, okay. But how many spots is that? 50 and up, or?
Can I add meters there?
No, some of those apply to, I think, as small as 10 or 20 spaces.
Okay.
Okay.
But yeah, to Commissioner Northcross's point, no matter how it's used, it would have to have a site plan on its own, or it'd have to have an application or request to the city for whatever they use it for.
Okay, and the certificate of occupancy that's going to be granted will take into account the number of parking spaces available, so that
Only the ones that are on site.
Right.
If something changes that the applicant's able to secure off-site parking agreements, we'll work with them in the building department to ensure that appropriately, but so far that has not been presented to staff.
Okay, okay. Thank you. I think I understand.
And when I say off-site, I'm talking about the west side of Woodward that would still comply with the ordinance.
I think I understand now. Thank you.
Any other comments? Should we call for a roll call here?
All right, are you ready? Commissioner McGinnis,
Yes to approve.
Commissioner Northcross,
Yes to approve.
Commissioner Sinclair,
Yes to approve.
Commissioner Shepherd.
Yes to approve.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Congratulations, guys.
Thank you for
You will not be
choosing
disappointed.
Pontiac.
You will not be disappointed. Thank you.
I have to say, that's got to be one of the hardest areas to develop.
Yeah.
And I think it says that, yeah, we may need to look at some of these formulas again. I mean,
Mark?
this is the second
Oh,
big
this is the
parking
new
space thing.
The new zoning ordinance, there will be an evaluation of parking. So
I was going to say, can we look at the parking requirement for light manufacturing versus manufacturing? Because there is a significant difference.
we're going to
There
do that
really
as
is.
part of the zoning ordinance rewrite after the master plan is completed.
Okay, thank you.
So.
And I guess these are some things to include in our comments about the master plan
Yeah.
as we send them in.
So next up is staff communications. I just wanted to briefly touch on some city council items. City council heard the first reading pretty late last night of the automobile service ordinance, really that splits up that current designation into gas stations, car washes, and service stations as 3 different land uses. The next reading for that, second reading, will be on March 18th. Also on March 18th, there are 3 items that are planned to go before City Council. One is the rezoning for 461 West Huron that you heard at the February meeting. 2 is an extension of Lighthouse for their campus improvements. Lighthouse got approval in 2023, or I believe 2023 for their site plan. They need an additional year, and no, I'm sorry, this is on the conditional rezoning. They received it in 2023. They have had some difficulty with the Hovey Lane vacation and with a few other things. They are moving forward. From the city's perspective, they've done a lot of due diligence. They've not been sitting around. And so that comes before City Council on March 18th to extend that, I believe, for either 1 or 2 years. I'm going to have to finalize that. And then 43 Columbia, we received this week a request. So that has not actually had first reading at City Council. This is a rezoning for the former Owens School. We did get a request for additional conditions. I'm still reviewing them. I apologize. I don't have all them to brain yet, but we're working with our attorneys to revise that conditional rezoning agreement and then take that to City Council. If we can get all those documents together tomorrow, that'll make it on the March 18th meeting. If not, it'll just be 2 weeks later. But hopefully City Council can get a full review with the applicant in the near future as well. Any other City Council actions, Mike, before I move on to the next item?
We encourage everyone to visit visionpontiac.com.
Yep. So thank you for interluding that. So the public input process goes till April 8th. So there is just over 1 month to be able to provide comments. As Planning Commission members, I encourage you to go on there. You're going to be providing, if you provide comments, it's as an individual member. Now, when it comes to May 7th, there will be a public hearing. You'll get a lot of input from the public. You guys will be making a decision and reviewing this as a board, where you'll be, it's not necessarily the views of one, but it's the views of all 7 of you combined. So please take a look. I know a month may seem like a long time off, but it seems like we're having Planning Commission meetings very often, so I'm sure it'll come quickly. And then we're planning on taking this to City Council on May 20th, if all goes well, for adoption of the plan and go from there. If there's any questions, or if anyone from the public would like to talk further about the plan, I'd be happy to make time to review that further. And then the last item under staff communications, our next meeting is Wednesday, April 2nd. It is looking like we have the rezoning for 11 Mohawk, and I believe we have 2 site plans that are on the docket, but the only public hearing I believe we're going to see is for 11 Mohawk. So it should be a manageable night, although obviously with site plans there's a lot to review. And thank you, Planning Commission, for your due diligence this evening on trying to resolve some of these issues.
Okay. Staff communication, discussion from commissioners. I'd just like to say that our Optimist fundraiser for the chili cook-off has been rescheduled to March 15th due to the weather that we had that weekend of February 15th. So we're still on. You can still get a chance.
And I'm completely amiss. I forgot to do an introduction just now from our new planner. And if you could go to the podium real quickly, introduce yourself. we are very excited to have him on. He actually grew up in Pontiac, and so we're excited for his future with us. So go ahead.
Like Mark said, I'm from the area. My name is Clarence C. III, not to be confused with junior or senior. Yeah, it's on. But yeah, I have a background in public policy and law. I'm not a JD, but I hope to bring that experience to the city and, in my own little way, add to the improvement of the city. So.
Good, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank
We're
you.
sending him through a lot of planning training. The site plan training is, I think, coming up next week through the Michigan Association of Planners. So we're very much excited to have him on board. He'll probably be working with the ZBA primarily in a few months, but we hope to see him here from time to time and hopefully presenting and growing as a professional. But we're very excited to have him on the team. I also wanted to mention the invitation. Michigan Association of Planning is partnering with Oakland County for a ZBA training on Tuesday, April 29th. Now, it is ZBA focused, but I do want to say that that invitation is extended to Planning Commission if anyone wants to attend. I believe it's from 5:30 to 8:30, just to understand the process, the role. It may help you out as commissioners to understand how the ZBA functions, but it is open to Planning Commission members, so just reach out. I know that is the night of a city council meeting, but if there's any interest, please let me know after the meeting. So.
All right, any other commissioner comments?
I have one. After the last commission meeting in February, it was mentioned regarding 461 Huron to me, regarding, it was just casual conversation regarding voting. And we talked about density, and the applicant came back to us, decided on 4 stories, which is approximately 40 feet, and R3 is max of 35 feet. So the comment that was posed to me was, well, it's only a 5-foot difference. My vote wasn't based on a 5-foot difference, and I wanted this to be clear in case some of the commissioners were not aware, and this is the reason why on Johnson, I voted no, and I thought R3 was a more appropriate use because I feel and read many of the social media comments regarding people that are decision makers. So with R4, not only are there height requirements, there are also minimum square footages that they can build to. And I just wanted to let everyone know that they did have studios, and they can make them as small as 350 square feet, a 1-bedroom 400 square feet, a 2-bedroom 600 square feet, a 3-bedroom 800 square feet. With an R3 zoning, the minimum square footage is 600 square feet, and that is why I voted as such. I just felt the need to explain it. And those are my comments. Thank you.
Michael?
I can't think of anything. I apologize for my ongoing cough.
No comments for me. Motion to adjourn?
Sure.
Aye.
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 Aye.